Hello, everybody. My name is Dean, and welcome back to the InkGuild podcast. I'm joined today by Brooke.
Hi.
And Gabe.
Hello.
I just...
You good?
all I heard was an ow.
Oh.
I said hello.
So just oh.
Am I not coming through right now?
No, you're probably coming through just fine. I'm just an idiot. All right, I'm gonna redo that. Oh my god. We've been doing 3 seasons of this shit, and I still can't do a fucking intro properly.
Damn it, Dean. Get it together, man.
I know, right? They're an important part of people's breakfast.
Here's the thing about sex in fiction. You don't need to have a fucking sex scene.
I can't stand those books. They make me so mad.
I can't replace a fire alarm on my own.
Say your morning routine.
Lemonade across my bed.
An unexpected pregnancy. Now baby just like who's your mommy?
Hello, everybody. My name is Dean, and welcome back to the InkGuild podcast. Today, I'm joined by Gabe.
Hello.
And Brooke.
Hi.
For today's episode, we're going to be talking about the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So, specifically because there's so much material within that within this franchise, we're going to be sticking exclusively to the Infinity Saga movies. So, from the first Iron Man all the way back in 2008 to Spider-Man: Far From Home, that released at some point last year, or 2 years ago. Oh God. Okay, and I'll get to that in a second, actually. But before we get to that, actually, I thought I'd lay some ground rules for how tonight is going to work out, because tonight is going to be, I think, the most interesting, or one of the more interesting episodes of the InkGuild podcast that we've done so far. So, if you've been listening for as long as you have, or for, if you've been listening up until this point, we would typically just record through a screen. And, lately we've been incorporating Discord overlays as of season 2. But because there is so much to talk about in regards to the MCU, we are now going to be sticking with a tier list instead for the first half. There are 23 movies. Each of us are going to go over each movie individually, talk about the story and some of the things we like, some of the things we don't like, etc., while also placing them in a tier list. Keep in mind that these are just our opinions, and with all that being said, if everybody could hop onto the tier list. So the rankings on this tier list of the 23 movies is best, great, good, meh, bad, worst. Best, obviously, don't need to explain it. The worst, to be honest, I can make a prediction now and say that none of them are really deserving of the worst. But maybe that might change. Anyway, I've listed all the movies chronologically. So again, starting at Iron Man 1, all the way to Spider-Man: Far From Home. We've excluded the TV series and we've excluded Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the Netflix TV series, and I think Agent Carter and all those shows, because most people are familiar with the MCU, so most of the mainstream, I guess, is more familiar with these movies than the other ones. It really takes a hardcore audience to participate in everything. But where would a hardcore audience be without the first movie? And that is Iron Man 1. So let's first talk about Iron Man 1. That was released all the way back in 2008. It starred Robert Downey Jr., Terrence Howard, Gwyneth Paltrow. What was Obadiah's? Jeff Bridges,
man.
Jeff Bridges. So it's been a while. Okay, so Iron Man 1.
Kino. Hard Kino for me. The movie rocks.
Yeah.
I love how they took like a, not even a C tier, like a fucking F tier Marvel character that no one except for like really, like my dad who's like a comic book collector was really into Iron Man, but I don't know a single person who like gave a shit about Iron Man. When I was a kid, it was all about like it was Wolverine. That was like the top tier.
Mhm.
Then like you'd have your Batman and Superman. That was like you degrade superheroes.
Yeah, it's Spider-Man. He was
Somewhere
the
down the
most
line-
famous for like.
Oh yeah, Spider-Man. Fuck yeah, Spider-Man, of course. And then like bottom of the fucking barrel, you might have a kid who was like super into Iron Man, but that shit just was super rare. And whenever it did happen, you know that kid was like on some weird shit. But
Yeah.
now, Iron Man is like, what is he? He's one of the most like iconic characters ever. Like Robert Downey Jr. is one of the most bankable stars in Hollywood because of that role, because of that first movie.
Mhm.
It's a badass movie.
Yeah, it really set like, it really set like a new precedent for, this like for the franchise going forward. It introduced, or it made, it did all the points you said, like made a bankable star to Robert Downey Jr. especially, and I think like it is so difficult to imagine the role in any other way. Aside
You know that
from,
Nicolas Cage was originally, he was one of the people who was called for it, and he turned it down.
oh my
Yeah.
god, you can only
That's
imagine.
always weird to think about.
Yeah, it's like even when I would like even in 2008 when I wasn't really so comprehensive of like portrayals and all that shit, I was just like holy hell, awesome movie. Like I remember being awestruck by Robert Downey Jr.'s performance as Tony Stark. I thought that like there's no way anyone else could have played this role, and I was like 10 at the time.
Yeah.
So like that kind of feeling like lingers, and save for like like some of the more iconic moments, like the first the first suit out of that bunker for his escape. Like there was the flight test, which still remains like one of my favorite scored things. So like it remains like it has this awesome soundtrack to like all the pieces being like assembled on him, and then like the spray paint and shit. And like I think that first sequence where the suit was being assembled on him piece by piece, it is still one of my favorite sequences of the MCU so far. There were a lot of good moments in that movie, I think. Brooke, how about you?
That movie. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
No, say your thought. Say it. You gotta speak.
I was just gonna say, like that movie, fucking it had to be good. Like out of all of them, that was the movie that like they had to make it fucking good, or else this whole series would have collapsed on its own dick. Like that was the one.
Yeah.
That's true enough. Yeah, it certainly did kickstart this whole thing, and I think RDJ is literally the perfect person that could have played Tony Stark. It's hard for me to gush about this one. Like I watch it, and it's actually the only Iron Man movie that we own.
Mm-hmm.
But when I'm thinking about it, I always forget what happens in the second half, because to me, what really sticks in my mind was like the beginning. Like it feels like it's split so harshly between two sections, like one being him in the cave and making the suit, and then coming back to society and having the Obadiah plot line all of a sudden. Something about that kind of it just brings down the movie a little bit. Like it's still great,
Yeah.
or like not great. It's still like it's still good, and I still watch it. But having those two harsh separations, something about that.
Well,
I don't know.
yeah, I have to agree with you on that. Obadiah was, like he was a good parallel to Tony Stark, but I think given the track record of Marvel's villains at the time, that kind of bumps it down. So, I acknowledge.
Yeah, he's a bit weak.
Yeah. So because of that reason, and like because it is such an influential cornerstone in this franchise, I have to put it like in great, because Obadiah wasn't the greatest villain to be opposite of Tony Stark. I think I have to keep that apart from the best.
Yeah, that's where I've got it too.
Yeah, like he's an opposite of Tony Stark, but that doesn't make him like a great antagonist, and that's an issue with like many of Marvel's villains. But we'll get to that later.
Yeah, he kind of started a bad trend of villains just being the anti version of the hero.
Yeah. And speaking of that, we now have the Incredible Hulk that at the time was still at the time Bruce Banner was still being played by Edward Norton, and that's maybe the only thing I remember from this fucking movie. Like, I think I remember watching it 2-3 years ago, and it's not as bad as I initially remembered it to be. Like, it's hard to see, it's hard to watch. For me, it's hard to kind of like familiarize myself with Edward Norton as Hulk when Mark Ruffalo has done a really good job of playing Bruce Banner in the later movies. But yeah, he's fine. Like Hulk himself looks pretty sweet. Although the thing is, we were talking about, opposite villains instead of proper antagonists, and that's what Abomination was, basically. And Abomination's look was like kind of weird. That kind of turned me off a little bit. Like I get that, I get that in the comics and shit, Abomination is supposed to look as his namesake, but like, how about you guys? What do you think on the Incredible Hulk? Do you guys think it's as bad as it's kind of been labeled as, or?
I don't know if it's bad. It's a movie.
Yeah, it's a movie.
Yeah, that's basically my entire thoughts on it. It is The Incredible Hulk is one of the movies ever made.
Brooke?
I can't say much more than that. It's been years since I watched it. I watched it once, and it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
I honestly forget it's a part of the franchise every time. Like, I go back and remember like what movies are in the franchise. I'm like, oh yeah, Incredible Hulk. That was a movie that was real and existed, and I saw it in cinemas.
Mm-hmm.
That was the thing. Yep.
Yeah.
Like, I've watched every other thing multiple times, but that one I watched once, and so long ago, I don't remember it, and it doesn't feel like it's necessary.
Yeah.
Like,
I
we
think
get
I played the
introduced to it.
PlayStation 3 Incredible Hulk video game more than I have watched the movie.
There's a fucking video game on that?
Oh yeah, it was the 2000s, dude. There was a video game for every movie.
Oh yeah, I forget. Oh my god. Side tangent, do you remember when X-Men Origins Wolverine had a fucking video game that was actually a lot better than the movie?
Every video game had to have a movie. That was like the whole thing.
Yeah. All right. I guess I'll put it in meh then, because after such a great start with Iron Man, Hulk was eh.
Yeah, I'm not confident enough to say that it's bad, but like, I don't want to say it's bad because I haven't seen it in long enough to remember, but I'm not going to say it's good either because I haven't seen it in long enough to remember.
That's fine. It's not nearly as bad as people have said it is. It's fine.
Do people actually like hate it or something? Does it like have like an online reputation that I didn't know about?
I think like initially it was kind of divisive. Some people didn't mind it, some people didn't like it. I don't think it was like considered holy shit this is so fucking bad or holy shit this is so fucking good. People were just kind of like mad about it. And then
it's difficult for me to imagine someone having like a strong opinion about that movie, to be honest.
Yeah, it's so middle of the road that I think like it's inoffensive. It's kind of just there, like Brooke said.
It's there, yeah. It's really just so forgettable. You know it exists, but you don't really think that much about it. No one ever really talks about it. It's there. It was a thing. We moved on.
Yeah, like it's like I think more people have been more kind of like accepting to pass it, I guess, in their watch order, just because Mark Ruffalo, like people are more familiar with Mark Ruffalo as Hulk. But
I mean, you don't really need that movie.
Yeah,
you don't need it to understand Hulk or Bruce. You get enough of him in the first time we see him to know what's going on. Plus, I feel like a lot of people who were coming into Marvel at the beginning were like the fans of the comics anyway, so they already knew like what was going on.
Yeah, but
I remember when I was a kid, like, and Avengers was coming out, I had completely forgotten about Incredible Hulk. I thought that it was going to be Eric Bana in Avengers.
All right. I guess let's move on to Iron Man 2 then. And this one, if I can remember correctly, introduces the audience to Black Widow, elaborates more on S.H.I.E.L.D., gives us one of the weaker villains, in my opinion, and not much else. Really, I'm probably forgetting things, but like,
I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, it does. It introduces a lot of concepts that are like integral to the franchise. It's weird to think about the fact that so many important concepts are introduced in a movie that is fucking terrible.
yeah, I like having oh, this was also when Don Cheadle assumed the role of Rhodey instead of Terrence Howard, and I forget why, but
Bless. It was because they didn't get along in the first movie.
oh, okay. So yeah,
That was like the whole thing. It's like those two actors were catfighty, and they're like, "Yeah, we can't really have you guys be best friends." So
fair enough.
Yeah.
All right, well then, yeah, I welcome Don Cheadle. He's been a great Rhodey and a great like best friend to thing.
yeah,
Some of the more memorable scenes for me have been like that first one of the big Deus Ex Machina moments that I can remember is like, oh, fucking Iron Man has arm lasers that had to charge for like however long, but we never saw it up until that exact moment. That's infuriating to think about, because like I've been so aware of Deus Ex Machinas and just how annoying it can be, and after watching it I'm like, ugh. But on top of that, yeah, Black Widow's introduction, finding out more about Shield, that was pretty cool. And I'll get your guys' opinion on Whiplash. I think that's Mickey Rourke's character, but yeah, Whiplash is like a weak villain, and I feel
Yeah.
like there have been like how many reports of, you know, he had like Mickey Rourke had this angle for him, and there was how many things for this, but then Marvel was still trying to clamp down and be like, nah, maybe not. You'll just be there.
Yeah.
Yes. And honestly, like, what a waste. Like, I'm kind of indifferent about Mickey Rourke, but like his look in that movie was great. Like, electrified whips. That's pretty fucking sweet. I don't know why they would decide to waste it.
He doesn't really feel like a main villain. He feels like a henchman.
Yeah, honestly. Because wasn't that like some like shield operative or like the government that was more or less like, oh yeah, fuck all this, and then Mickey Rourke was just a part of it.
Sam Rockwell, he's in that movie. He's like he's Hammer Man, and he's you'd
Arm and
think he
Hammer?
would be like, yeah, Hammer Man.
Hammer Man.
He's like,
sorry.
it's sort of like a weird mix-up where like the henchman guy is the main villain, and the guy who's like an actual opponent to Tony Stark is like he's the power bottom. He's just there to give weapons and stuff to like this extremely generic, uninteresting Russian dude.
Yeah.
I don't get it. What a waste of Sam Rockwell.
Yeah. Brooke, how about you? Any thoughts on Iron Man 2?
I lean a bit the other way. I do quite enjoy Iron Man 2. Not that it's very good, but I was so happy to see Natasha in it, and I love her sequences in it. Although I feel like her character's a little bit strange compared to the other movies. Like, she feels different. She has a different vibe.
Yeah.
But I will just try and say that's because she was undercover and wasn't letting Tony know that she was a spy. So I'll just say it's that. I kind of liked Whip Guy, but yeah, that was the problem of having like two villains, is like one bad guy and then the other guy's just applying him stuff and then doesn't expect it when Whip Guy turns on him.
Yeah.
But it's funny to me because, like, looking back on it now, like now that we know everything, it's like that was the original guy who got like really mad at Tony Stark for doing something. Like, he felt wronged by Tony Stark personally. I'm gonna go mess him up. And then in Spider-Man, we get the other guy being like, Tony Stark messed me up, but he's dead now, so I'm gonna take it down on his protege.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like the first time we got that villain. So it's kind of funny that people hated that movie and then they redid the villain again. That villain formula.
Yeah. I think because of all of this, then I will say it's in meh. It's got some good moments, but it's ultimately like, whatever. I wouldn't necessarily put it in like bad or good. It's so there are like there are things to like praise it about, but then there are also like enough criticisms to keep it from like reading or like reaching the upper tiers, I guess.
Mm-hmm. It is just so meh. Like you need to watch it kind of to understand what's going to happen later on, but at the same time, it's not something you really want to revisit,
Yeah.
other than maybe to refresh your memory on what happened.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so now we're moving on to Thor, which honestly, it is probably I think it is maybe my second favorite movie out of the or actually it's probably like my third favorite out of phase 1. So Thor 1 introduced us to Asgard and the concept of Norse myth, which apparently um it's funny I think I might have read it somewhere, but like apparently these Norse gods are just like supposed to be aliens or something, and they just have their own like set kingdom and shit. But people on Earth have been like, "Oh, gods, okay." So, Thor introduced us to Chris Hemsworth as the titular character, Tom Hiddleston as Loki, Natalie Portman, Sir Anthony Hopkins, Idris Elba, like a whole powerful, like a really good cast of talent actually, and it introduced us, I think, to, I think some of the more, or it was one of the earliest concepts of Marvel going beyond Earth, which was really unique at the time. It was also directed by Kenneth Branagh, so I already know where I'm going to put it, but I think what keeps it from making it into the really high tiers is, how am I trying to say this? It wasn't as I think Thor at the time was still trying to find his footing as like as a standout character, because then at the time like it was still more or less like, you know, the god becoming a man story, which is very familiar with Superman. But the thing is with Thor, he had a much more interesting supporting cast that helped make it better, I guess, or to help make that story more fleshed out and interesting. Loki was a pretty good. Was he the antagonist? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like ultimately it was revealed that he was the antagonist, but more it was you know, it kickstarts like that brother dynamic between Thor and Loki. And like I think just in terms of like world building, Asgard itself, or at the time, was gorgeous. Like you would really see nothing like it. Like you would, that kind of like beauty and world building, especially in a movie at the time, that was more familiar for like the bigger budget movies that were outside of this franchise. So I would place it in good, but I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts, because maybe that might change the ranking.
Yeah, I really like this movie. I don't really have like anything too big to say about it. Like it's not like I don't think there's anything like spectacular about it, but it's just it's a good solid movie. It's like it's fun to watch. Uh, you know, it's got fun characters. I really, really can't get over Chris Hemsworth's blonde dyed eyebrows.
Oh my god,
in
I
the
didn't
movie.
want to fucking say it.
It really bothers
Oh
me
my
every
God.
time that I go back to rewatch it. But like that being said, it is like one of the ones from that first batch of movies that I go back to rewatch regularly, because like it's just a good movie. It's a fun movie.
Oh fuck, I'm so glad you brought that up. I was about to be, oh man. I had thought about that just as I ended my
It's
part, and I'm like, oh
Very bizarre. I don't know why they did it.
ugh.
There's sometimes in movies when I see that like someone's done something and I'm like, that's a choice.
Yeah. Like it must be a natural thing because blonde hair and all that, but it
It
looks
is.
weird.
It is not a natural thing.
Yeah.
It is very not natural.
Yeah. The armor design or like the costume design, I'll pass it over to Brooke in a second, but like yeah, the costume design is like still to this day some of the better things that I've seen in the MCU. Or at least up until that point. But anyway, Brooke.
I love Thor. This is a movie I watch quite a lot out of all of the movies. Like it's just so, I guess someone might say like simple, but it's beautiful in that sense because it's just like that arrogant young guy and he has to get taught a lesson and he becomes a better man for it. I didn't really like how quickly he and Jane fall in love because he's literally on Earth for like 3 days and she's like, I love you.
Yeah.
And it's like years later that they come back together in Dark World. So it's like I don't particularly think they developed their relationship very well. But she's still I love Jane Foster. I was so happy that Natalie Portman was playing her because she's just such a fun person as like the passionate scientist who's also just open to hearing this seemingly crazy guy talk about the fact that magic and science are one and the same, that he comes from another world, that there's these other realms and like a connecting tree bridge between them. It's so fun. And of course we get I don't remember his name now. The old scientist dude.
Oh shit, I don't remember.
Dr.
either.
Sweden Man?
Sweden Man. Naked
Sweden Man, we're gonna call him that. Yep.
Crazy Sweden Man.
I want to just call him Thor because I know it's a Swedish name, but I know that's not right.
I feel like it's Selvig or something.
Oh, it is
Selvig,
Selvig. Yeah, it is
yeah.
Selvig. Dr. Selvig, yeah.
It is Selvig? Cool. All right. Selvig, I feel like he's a very calming and cool character in that, and I feel like he kind of stands in like a tad little bit as a father figure for Thor while he's on Earth in like that bar scene.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was really cute and a good little like look at your father teaching you a lesson through a father on Earth kind of deal. Like, I don't know. For me, this movie is great because I can go back to it all the time and watch it and just fall in love with the characters all over again. And I love how Loki just secretly does all this stuff behind everyone's back without really getting called out, other than, of course, Heimdall, because Heimdall ain't take his shit. Heimdall always knows.
Yeah. You don't
I
fuck
also
with the guy
freaking
with a
love
big-ass
Idris
sword.
Elba.
Yeah.
Love him. Though it was very traumatizing for him to just immediately swing at Loki and try to kill him before Loki freezes him. I felt Loki just needed more love. So having Heimdall just like behead was like, no, don't, my child. I love Loki so much. Because that's the thing. It's like, I love Loki. Was he a great villain in Avengers? Absolutely not. But I love him as a character so much. He's so complex.
Yeah.
And he keeps going back to the same things for sure. But like him being in this movie just bumps it up again and again. It's like, I love this movie. I love it. It's great. Not the best, but it's great.
Yeah. So for you, it'd be great.
It's great. Yeah.
See, now I'm considering bumping it up too, actually, because like I have, like
It's so
like
key.
memeing of the eyebrows aside, like there were a lot of good things about this movie.
We get a lot. It's just like
Yeah.
Iron Man. Like we get a lot of. I mean, Iron Man 2. We get a lot of key people coming in. We get a lot of development and plot and going on. It's just like if Loki didn't fall off the bridge right at the end, he wouldn't have met Thanos. He wouldn't have gone to Earth. The Avengers wouldn't have assembled. Like everything depends on that movie.
That's true, and it paid off. So yeah, I've bumped it up to great.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. Going to good though, I think the one movie that actually does, in my opinion, deserve to be in good is Captain America: The First Avenger. Because while it also introduces a lot of key concepts that would be integral to S.H.I.E.L.D.'s creation, it also gave us a pretty good all-American hero in Chris Evans's Captain America, Steve Rogers. Like his origin story is pretty, I don't want to say pretty based, but like it is good. It introduced a lot, like it introduced like a very heroic, courageous character to the audiences, and that's easy for a lot of people to get behind. But even then, like this first movie, I think only belongs in good, especially compared to the other Captain America movies, because while it what Thor has as an origin story in terms of in terms of like its gorgeous world building, complex characters, and all that stuff, I think like Captain America, the first Avenger, it's clearly here is your good guy, here is your bad guy in the Red Skull. I think that kind of bumps it down for me. It's still a very like good guy bad guy story.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Like comparing it directly after Thor is definitely like, yeah, it doesn't have the same key things that drive the rest of the universe forward. It's just kind of like, here's Captain America.
Yeah, it's not a bad.
Yeah,
We didn't get Peggy Carter.
Yeah, it's not a bad introduction to the character. It's just like compared to like character complexity, which was introduced in Thor. Yeah, it's easy for like a mainstream audience to get behind Captain America because like he embodies like the American way, or at least how America would like to portray it that way.
That's America's ass.
Yeah.
Bend the rules to further my own priorities.
Basically.
Cough, cough.
Other talking points too, like Peggy Carter was a very strong or a strong character as well as a love interest, but I would much rather like, I don't know, I always like seeing just Peggy and not Peggy and Steve, because I've been very bitter about like love dynamics recently. Bucky is a great best friend character. The Red Skull, who was played by Hugo Weaving at the time, was fine. Like I had said earlier, he's very obviously like the not stereotypical bad guy, but he is the all like bad guy of the movie already. Like once you kind of figure it out and once it's been revealed, it's like, okay, yeah, I know where the story's going.
Yeah, I mean, like he's a Nazi. It's kind of difficult to reach character complexity with a Nazi.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even if they don't talk about that, like the whole thing of Nazis, like the Jew part, they don't really talk about that. You're still like, yeah.
Yeah.
Now we move into personally my first best movie, which is the first Avengers.
You're putting that in best?
Yeah. It is thing. I will put it in best if everyone else agrees, but then we'll obviously have the time to discuss it. But why I put it as the best is because it's the first time like it's the first instance of like long term of Marvel's signature long-term storytelling coming into like a good thing. Like you have all these characters coming from what was at the time like part of a franchise but not like part of the universe completely, even though they were building towards it. Like having everyone there interacting for the first time, like that was so cool. It solidified the Avengers name as a mainstream franchise. In terms of iconic moments, there was obviously the Avengers trio, which was Iron Man, Thor, and Captain America fighting in the woods for the first time. That was sweet. Bruce Banner's transformation, both inside the helicarrier and stopping, or like the I'm always angry thing. While cheesy, it's still fun to remember that. The verbal spats between Captain America and Iron Man were setting up like a very long-term, or like a very good long-term story between the two of them and showing their parallels. Hawkeye was like Hawkeye and Natasha had like their signature dynamic was really being played off there. Thor and Loki's relationship got developed a lot more, which is great. And yeah, that's why I'm saying it's the best. Because at the time, and maybe I'm just like misremembering 2012, but like at the time, that hadn't really been done before, and everyone
No.
was excited. What about you guys?
It's-
Where would you
it's-
place it?
I like that you bring up like the setting up stuff because I hadn't thought about that for a while, but I do remember like when the first trailer came out and like Tony and Steve have that scene where they're sort of like they're giving each other shit, they're staring each other down, they're twiggling their eyebrows at each other, they're simulating their nipples, and they're just like, ugh, ugh. And like I remember people in the YouTube comments were like, oh shit, Civil War is coming because they're getting angry at each other. And I remember thinking back then, it's like, wow, you guys really like reading into shit, huh? And then I was fucking proven wrong.
They're twiddling their nipple.
They were giving each other fucking ragey googly eyes.
Oh my god.
Oh my
Like
god!
reverse googly eyes, just anger.
I clearly didn't think of it like that. I just thought it was like two, like, you know.
Two bros chilling
yeah.
in a helicarrier 5 feet apart because they're not gay.
Oh my god! All right. So then, would that bump it? Would that like? Actually, hold on, Brooke. Where would you, or what are your thoughts on the first Avengers?
Oof. Okay. Well, I remember watching it quite like everyone watched it so much when it first came out. Like that was very popular. I remember we went on like ski trips and stuff with our school, and the bus ride there every year was we're gonna put on Avengers. So we watched Avengers all the time on the buses too. It was just like that thing, and probably the first movie that really actually got me into the MCU because I don't think I'd actually seen any of the others before Avengers. It was like Avengers was the first one. Like I think we owned Iron Man, but I hadn't watched it because it didn't interest me. And then I saw Avengers, and obviously I wanted to watch everything, and that's when we started collecting all the DVDs. But pushing nostalgia aside, I haven't watched it for quite a long time, and thinking back on it, it just seems so childish. Like it's so simplistic. It's very much just a cartoony kids superhero movie. I don't know, there's something about it. It just feels so young, which is like kind of nice at the same time because like it got really dark later on in the series, like in the universe, but that one is not one I go back to very often. And I felt like after Thor, having Loki just be this kind of cold and uncharismatic villain was very upsetting because it just felt like he lost his character.
Yeah.
Like he was just there, and I was like, okay. And then it was just a horde of faceless aliens to fight, and it was like, all right.
Oh, that's true.
But it was good to have all of the, the team come together finally.
Oh yeah, the
And I
iconic
always-
team up.
Yeah, I can't speak. Iconic team up, and of course having Bruce Banner finally become Hulk in that movie was very, mwah. It's nice.
Yeah.
I like that one scene in the helicarrier where they're all in the lab where Tony and Bruce were, and they're like arguing, and the camera just kind of like shifts around, and everyone's talking at once, and it's really hard to discern what anyone's saying, and the camera tilts down and flips over, and it comes back around to like just in front of the trident, and Bruce grabs it, and you see like the shift of everyone's bodies and the click of the gun holster on Fury and all that. Like, that was a tasty scene. I love the conflict in that room. That was a good scene.
Fair point.
But overall, nothing else really sticks out to me from the movie. It's just kind of like, I know they all came together. I know Loki lost a lot of what I loved of him in Thor. So it's like, it's there. It's not something I visit very often, but it's something that I used to love.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I watched it like pretty recently, and I don't think it holds up. I definitely think it came out like I feel like we can agree that the Marvel movies like more recently they're like really consistent in terms of like the general tone and vibe. And I think Avengers was sort of like a weird time in the series when it hadn't exactly like found its vibe yet, and like it's sort of this weird mishmash of like the first Avenger and Iron Man and Thor are like very different movies from each other, and it sort of feels like a weird splash of these like different vibes. It sort of feels like a cheesy comic book movie. Then Iron Man is here, and it's like, oh, now it's like gritty military stuff. Oh, but then Thor is here, and now it's like magic stuff, and it's like it's. I mean, these elements end up like working together really well, like in other movies. I think in this movie they hadn't like quite figured out how to like make it work yet, and it's just a little weird.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to call it bad because like, but it's off. There's something odd about it.
Should we put it in
See-
great or good?
The thing is, the next Avengers movie is Age of Ultron, right? And it's above Age of Ultron.
Oh yeah, it's definitely above
So
Age of Ultron.
I'd put it in best simply for that.
All right.
Not gonna lie.
Like it's
Yeah, I have it in meh, and I have Age of Ultron considerably lower. So
yeah. Well, as I've stated in the beginning, it's probably like one of my favorites still, just because of like,
yeah,
holy shit, everyone's together for the first time ever, and like it's that whole,
it's one of those movies I feel like I'd like a lot more if I was more into this series. Like if I was more into the series when it came out, I would probably have like a way fonder memory of it, and I would have like a lot higher of an opinion of it. As it is, it's like it's a movie that I didn't like really get into the series until I want to say like 2014. So
Mhm.
Mm.
Okay. So
Mhm.
now moving on to Iron Man 3, which explores kind of like the immediate aftermath of everything. It explores Tony's PTSD. It had the Mark 47, which was one of the cooler suits that they'd introduced at the time. It had a pretty based villain. Nothing really special about it. I think that's it. The only thing that I can really remember off the top of my head is those first few minutes of the Mark 47 being put on. Like that was like probably one of the better parts of the movie. Everything else is it's like, again, with the Incredible Hulk, it certainly is not as terrible as I remember it being. Like it's definitely not it's definitely not like bad or the worst, but I think like with the PTSD or like with the anxiety attacking the PTSD thing that apparently Tony was having, I did not get that at all. Granted, I didn't really know that much about anxiety and PTSD at the time, and even then, or even when I do know a lot more about it now than I did, I feel like they didn't explore that enough. Like that would probably fuck him up a lot more than what was shown in the movie, I guess. Maybe that's just me though. And on top of that, like, oh wait, no, I also remember like in the final few minutes there was like the whole suit thing, or like, you know, all of Tony's suits coming in and like basically fucking shit up for like the final villain. I'm like, it's whatever. Oh wait, I also remember like there was the whole reveal of like of like Iron Man's most iconic villain being just like
a guy,
just the guy, which was
just a random British
Another
man.
man slighted by Tony Stark himself.
Yeah, I'm like, just
Wow.
I don't know. I
I forgot. It's just another man slighted by Tony Stark. And he's like, I have beef with you, man. So I'm going to kill every people. Every
Yeah.
people. Yes.
ultimately, for me, it's just a movie, so it belongs in meh.
I'm gonna make some enemies tonight because I know that like hardcore Marvel fans really hate this movie. I fucking love this movie. I'm
Oh,
not even
really?
gonna lie. I really love Iron Man 3. Yeah, it's one of my favorites. I have it right up there next to the first one for me personally. I fucking adore this movie. Like it's straight up one of my favorites. I think okay, the whole PTSD thing, it is a little weird that like he suddenly has PTSD when he seems like okay at the end of Avengers. But that's like one of those things. I'll touch on this later, but that's like one of those things where I feel like these are separate movies. Like you can't eat. They're not like it's a series, but it's like a series. It's a series, but it's like weird. And like this is it's a part of a trilogy. And I feel like taking these movies sort of on their own, it's like an exploration of like Tony Stark being this fucked up narcissist, and like Iron Man 3 is sort of like a it feels like a legitimate conclusion to that, with him like having to deal with now not only him being like his usual narcissistic self, but like having to deal with like a legitimate mental illness. Like he has panic attacks throughout the movie that are like debilitating. He just collapses in a restaurant and just goes into the comfort of his suit, and it's like it's very jarring to see that in a superhero movie, because that's like even outside of Marvel, that's the kind of shit that I had never seen in a superhero movie when I was a wee lad, and it was surprising, and it was like, and as I grew up and I started to learn more about this stuff and I started to understand like more about the context of that situation, I started to have like more of an appreciation for like it's not like the best handled. I don't think they could get into a lot of the intricacies of like dealing with PTSD and like panic attacks and stuff, because bottom line, it is a kids movie. You can't really have like an in-depth exploration of that stuff in a movie that also has to have like a big Dragon Ball Z superhero battle at the end of it. But like I think for what the parameters they had to work within, like I think they got the job done. It's a pretty compelling like subplot in that movie, and like even just outside of that, I'm not like a huge, again, I wasn't a huge Iron Man person, so the reveal of the Mandarin didn't bug me because I didn't give a shit about the Mandarin prior to seeing the movie. So finding out that the Mandarin was actually just, I thought he was one guy and then he was the other guy, but then it turned out like another guy was just pulling the strings. It didn't really like bug me because I didn't go into it with like a oh man, I'm gonna see the Mandarin. That's probably more like a personal thing. I can respect that. Like if you're a Marvel fan, that probably really bothered you because the Mandarin's like he's a character that people like really love. He's like a super iconic villain. I don't really get how he's a super iconic villain for a guy in a robot suit. That never makes sense to me. But like, whatever. I can. It's comic book stuff. I can deal with that. But I do like the sort of noirish aspect of it though. I like that Tony Stark voices over the movie like it's a noir sort of thing. This director also did one of my favorite movies, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, which also had Robert Downey Jr. and it feels very similar in terms of like the vibe to that movie.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen it, I'd recommend watching that movie to like to know what I'm talking about. It's very they're sort of like star-crossed lovers. But yeah, I adore that movie. I think it's got like I think it's a good story. I don't love the villain, but like I don't really hate the villain either. I think it's got some of the best action scenes. That one action scene where like his suit is flying through the building, but like piece by piece, so he's like
Oh yeah.
flying around on like half a glove and a boot with an Uzi. That shit was badass. That was so inventive. And that started like a really solid trend for me with these movies where whenever Iron Man would show up, he would have some new gimmick to his suit, and they would have like a really inventive action sequence involving like whatever the gimmick was. There's one that I really like in another movie. I'll get to that when we get to that movie though.
Mhm. Yeah, you know what? You bring up a lot of good points. I think overall, like where I'm placing it would probably be a lot more different now. All right, Brooke, how about you?
Random quick aside, what is Rhodey's suit called? I'm forgetting it right now.
War Machine.
The America Robot.
War Machine. Good God, I could not remember War Machine. Ah, right, this movie. I'd watch it a lot faster than I would the second Iron Man. but at the same time, it's still not one that I'd watch very frequently. Like,
Then I
it
think
works,
in that
but
case, I don't
yeah,
wanna put
it is. It is kind of jarring with the PTSD, but I think that's only because they don't really continue that. The problem is that they put it in so heavily into this movie, but then they don't really carry on those panic attacks or any moments of like heavy. I just, like, I don't know. Having it in this movie was great because, yeah, we
Oh,
don't
thanks,
really get to
Cherry
see that in
Ware.
movies.
God damn it. God damn it.
What's up?
Oh my god.
What's up?
All the interruptions. Why are they all coming at once? What
I'm
was that?
embarrassed. I don't know what happened. Sorry.
I didn't have my screen on. I think, what I miss? What happened?
No,
A bunch
it's
of
not important.
notifications.
Okay.
In the grand scheme of things, it's not important. It was just an inconvenience.
In the grand
just
scheme of
funny.
things, nothing is important.
Oh, fair.
That's true enough. We are spec. Yeah, this movie, it's a movie.
Yeah. I think with the points Gabe brought up, I think it bumped it up to good for me, and I think like that's kind of where the consensus is at the time. And
Yeah, like it is. I also agree with that action scene with the pieces coming in. So good. Also,
Yeah.
I forgot that it has like a really heavy relationship between him and Jarvis, which was great because it's like even more saddening when Jarvis leaves his suit.
Air
You know,
quote leaves.
like he dies to become Vision.
Yeah.
Because it's like that's the connection. That was Tony's guy. That was Tony's guy. And this movie really hammered that home, like the relationship. It was cute, and it was like more than just AI. Jarvis was like a friend, a caring friend. He cared. Like he wasn't just a robot. Because like when Tony was gone, he was checking the news feeds, trying to see if Tony was alive. He was doing that of his own volition, and it's just my heart, my heart can't handle that. Because then he loses Jarvis because Vision doesn't even really get along with Tony when he becomes Vision. It's so sad, and I hate that. But that movie establishes that, like, breaking of a bond, and it just. I feel like all these movies just kind of lead up to Tony being alone, and it makes me really sad.
Oh well, I didn't think of it like that. Fuck.
Sorry.
All right. Well, moving on to a very divisive movie, Thor: The Dark World, which introduces.
Is it divisive? I thought we all agreed.
Some people are still kind of indecisive about it. It is. I'll state it right now. It is probably the first and only movie that I would consider putting the worst. It's bad for sure, but it's bad for sure, but I want to like kind of evaluate it before I go through with it. So in Thor: The Dark World, it introduces us to arguably the weakest villain. Some pretty nice visuals, I guess, but Loki's story arc was all over the place. Jane or Natalie
As it always
Portman.
is.
Natalie Portman's Jane was like, I feel like her character could have been treated a lot better in this movie. Chris Hemsworth's character, like Chris Hemsworth's Thor in this movie was a lot different in a way compared to like the previous thing, because like in Thor 1 he was still like he was a god amongst men, but then suddenly he understood humility and all that stuff. In Avengers he had this dynamic with Loki, and then in Thor: The Dark World it was like, what? That aside, I think it just has to go down to like the villain Malekith, Malekith, who was like, there was so like apparent, like, you know, there was so much going on in this movie, both like during production and out of production, that was like, yeah, it's not great for me. Like some of the redeeming factors are, like I said, the visuals. I think introducing or like going more in depth with the Infinity Stone, specifically the Ether, which I forget which stone that is. I don't remember. But yeah, there's not really a lot of redeeming with Thor: The Dark World, unfortunately.
Yeah, Malekith really bugs the shit out of me. Like, partially just because he's a waste of Christopher Eccleston, but
Yeah.
also because like it's a waste of Malekith. Malekith is one of the best Thor villains in that they had access to. Like, Malekith is such a solid villain. He's not like an incredibly deep or complex villain, but like he's just such a fun bad guy. He's such a clear, chaotic, neutral character. He doesn't really give a shit about like having like a real goal or like being serious about anything. He just wants to cause trouble. It's sort of like they had such a great opportunity to have a character who was sort of like a, a an adversary to Loki in that way. Who's just wants to fuck shit up and cause chaos and just be a shithole. But he doesn't do that. He's like a grumpy man in the movie who I don't even fucking remember what he wants to do. I have no
He's
idea.
a serious Dark Lord.
Yeah, he's just a
Yeah.
serious man in a suit,
Serious
and he's
Dark
like,
Lord.
"Oh, I need to get the what the fuck is the McMuffin called in the movie?
The Reality Stone.
I know
Oh,
it's
is it
called
the
the
Reality
Reality
Stone?
Stone later on, but it's called
Yes, the
something
Reality
else.
Stone.
It's
the
called
ether.
something else in the movie though.
It's
The
the
ether,
ether.
yeah. He wants to get the ether. He wants to get that space juice, and he wants to use it to. I don't remember.
Plunge the
It's the most
universe into darkness. I did just watch this one the most recently out of all the MCU ones, so I do remember. He just wants to plunge everything into darkness. He hates
should've-
light.
I should have. Yeah, yeah. He hates light. He just wants to make everything dark.
I don't like
Like,
the light.
come
It hurts
on.
my eyes. Make it dark.
I
God.
need to turn the brightness down on the universe.
Turn the light off.
Bro, the brightness setting's at.
Y'all like the fucking moon?
Also, just like design comparison, like
It's
Malekith in the
yeah.
comics it's like night and day. Malekith in the comics has such a unique design. He looks so fucking cool. And I think what pisses me off the most about this is that like they tried to do like an edgy version of this design by having half of his face be like burnt off or something.
They tried.
Like,
Well,
there was an
that was
attempt.
because of Thor.
Eh.
Yeah. I
yeah,
mean,
Malekith is just a disappointment.
yeah,
Yeah.
he's pretty.
Pretty waste, more like it.
Thor
Yeah.
the Dark World, more like Thor the Dark Color Scheme. Guys, I can't see shit. Turn the brightness up.
Where did I put it? I feel like I wasn't as harsh on it because I still just watch it and enjoy it. Like, mostly, okay, actually, when I asked to watch it with my parents, I wanted to watch it simply because of Loki and because I wanted some more Asgard. Like, I like that it comes back to Asgard because with Thor, it was like split between Earth and Asgard. But this one has like a little bit more universe building. We get to see some other places and we get more Asgard, which I was really happy about. And we got to see some more of the Warriors 3.
I guess, yeah.
And this is just a quip I have with all of the Thor trilogy for not really developing that much with the Warriors 3. Like, I loved Civ and the Warriors 3. I felt like I feel like I did watch a TV show or like maybe read a little bit about them. And I just felt very disappointed that they were just kind of there and not really doing that much throughout the series. Like, the Dark World is where they actually do things, at least. So I enjoy it for that and Asgard and Loki.
Yeah,
And I do cry every time that Freya dies. So
that's true.
it manages to pull my heartstring.
Yeah. On the thing,
Though-
oh,
Wait.
go.
Wait, I forgot because we also had just watched Thor before we watched The Dark World. So we watched Thor and then we watched The Dark World. And immediately to my mom, I was like, yo, what the hell happened to Odin? They completely changed his personality between those two movies. What the fuck was that? I hated it. I was so mad. Because in the first one, he's like still kind of fatherly. He still has some love and like patience, but he is still like, gotta put my foot down on these matters. But in The Dark World, he's just an absolute dickhead. And it's like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
What is this? I don't approve of that. So that was so jarring because I didn't really notice it until I watched those two movies almost back to back, and I was like, "Oh my god, what? Huh?"
It's Brooke's angry voice.
When I'm angry, I just go.
It's just a series of noises. Valid points, but seriously incomprehensible angry noises. So I think
I'm passionate.
yeah. So okay, one thing I was gonna quickly mention regarding the world building. Thor, like the Thor movies, was ultimately like it did have. I really don't know actually how much of an influence it had in introducing a lot of Norse myth to, like to a mainstream audience, because most people are like still romanticizing and like in love with Greek myth. But when you brought up the Warriors 3 and like the whole light elves versus dark elves thing, that is such an interesting dynamic that I think they didn't really play up on a lot. It was more or less just like, okay, here's how it all ties back into the MCU, and like here's how it all happens on Asgard and shit. And I'm like, yeah, there's so many interesting things. Like there's 9 realms in Norse myth that is so worthy of exploration, right? And I understand that you can't do that within a 2.5-hour movie, but like, fuck, I wish they had done more. But I guess in that case, where would we put it? Bad or worst?
They kind of did. When you think about it, they did introduce 2 other worlds that we hadn't seen before, so they did all right.
I guess. Because so far they'd introduced Jotunheim, they'd introduced Asgard. There's Midgard.
What other planets did they introduce?
Huh?
I don't remember what planets they introduced in Dark World. What planets are they?
The actual Dark World, like the place where Malekith and his elves came from, that was one of them. And we also got one of the Warriors 3. I don't even remember their names because they did that badly.
Yeah.
Characterize them. Whatever the Asian one is. I hate saying that. His world.
Yeah.
I hate saying that.
No, it makes sense.
I don't remember his name.
That's the only tangible thing that you could probably get off of right now.
Yeah. I can't describe them as...
There's the Robin Hood blondie musketeer dude, and then there's big ginger redhead. That's all.
Yeah. I just remember them as Gimli, Asian guy, and the guy who's played by Shazam. That's how I know them.
I think in that case, then, because of how many things they didn't like, because of their inconsistencies and waste of a lot of potential, worst.
Yeah, hard agree.
All right, now we move on to Captain America: The Winter Soldier, which is still to this day my favorite MCU movie ever. I think, given everything that we had seen so far, so like when they had gone into space, I thought, hey, that's pretty cool. But then with everything else going on, and like with the sky the limit being, like with basically the sky being the limit, it was so refreshing to have a more grounded-ish story, and to it, and like, grounded in the sense that like this is where the Russo brothers were introduced, which for better or for worse have like made this a really good fucking movie. It introduced themes of espionage, conspiracy, which was at the time very welcome in what was a growing franchise. It's one of the different movies to a degree, and I just found like the whole and I think with Bucky Barnes being the Winter Soldier, it's like, oh, that's cool, and then like it's cool to think about it now, but then like in the moment it was like, holy shit, Bucky is the Winter Soldier, that's so fucking cool, in my mind at the time. And like Steve's stealth suit was great until, and then eventually he had to go to the throwback suit in like the latter half. Bucky catching the shield when Steve threw it, that was a great moment. I can't remember if it was in Civil War, if it was Winter Soldier, but it was Steve like on a helipad carrier, and he was like gripping a fucking helicopter with the helipad, just trying to keep Bucky from flying away. Holy fuck, that was awesome. And all right, well, I think this podcast is now sponsored by Brooke's opera singing.
Oh, okay. I'm glad you said something. I was like, what's going on?
You know, what the
What's-
fuck was that?
What?
You were opera singing just a second ago.
No, you did not hear that.
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
We both did.
There's no way.
What were you
Yeah.
doing?
I was in another room. What the hell? How far does this microphone go? Jeez.
I guess, well, now that you're back, do you want to talk about the Winter Soldier?
Yeah, I love the Winter Soldier. It's great.
You're gonna go fucking
Probably
opera sing
watched
about
the
it?
most. Yeah, totally. It's definitely one of the MCU movies that I watched the most. The thing was, so you know how I mentioned earlier that like Avengers got me into it, and I hadn't seen any of the other like first phase movies.
Mm-hmm.
That still holds true for this. I watched this before I'd seen Captain America, so the whole Bucky reveal, I didn't understand, and it didn't impact me. He's like, who the hell is Bucky? And I'm like, okay, I don't know who that is either. And then it was like, he's my friend. I'm like, oh, okay. And then I watched Captain America, and I was like, oh, shit. Because I hadn't seen the comics either, and I know people were like going into it knowing exactly who the Winter Soldier was, but I was very unaware to that.
Mm-hmm.
I still thought it was cool. I love the Winter Soldier's design, his aesthetic. I love that it's top tier shit.
Yeah.
It was interesting. Yeah,
It's fucking
like the
mess.
sound effects and the music going with him was just top tier. Love that shit.
I don't know who designed the sound cues for like when the Winter Soldier pops up, but I'm like, I would bet good money it's the same guy who did the sound effects for the Prowler in Spider-Verse, where it's just
Oh, yeah.
that,
Oh my
that
god.
cerebral.
Elements.
And I was like, yes, more of this into my mouth, please.
You know what? Yeah, you're right. Like, Winter Soldier really does have, like, some of the best sound design, or some of the best sound design in the MCU.
Oh yeah, not even just like those cues. The shit. When they're fighting on the highway and like they're Winter Soldier's just throwing fucking punches around. The arm noises that he makes still fucking stick with my brain because that shit is so solid. The sound design of that movie is top tier. That movie's a top tier for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
All right. Well, this was the
Like, not
easiest
gonna
best I've
lie,
ever put it
the
in.
fight scene is probably like only second to the fight scenes in Civil War, because again, Winter Soldier just fucking owns in Civil War, and I love everything that has him in it fighting.
Oh my god.
Like, that highway scene was just so good. Sam and Natasha and Steve all going against Bucky and his colleagues, and it's just
Yeah. As much as I
more
like,
and go.
Brooke noises.
I was, as much as I like the big superhero battles, when these movies are doing like their like crazy martial arts fights, that's when I'm really fucking into it because I love martial
elevator
arts
scene.
shit. Oh yeah, the fucking elevator scene.
The elevator scene is like the
That's,
best
you know,
fight scene, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think to me it is still like the best fight scene I've ever
fucks.
seen.
It's good.
What'd
I
you
love that
say?
they made Captain America like a villain kind of thing. Like, yo,
Yeah.
Captain America is on the run. We gotta hunt him down, and people are like, "Why? He's Captain America." Also, his fall from the building, that will always make me flinch, even though I know he's fine. It's so horrible. I hate it. Like
I
the
love that
crash
scene
out of the
when-
elevator.
I love how right after that elevator, right after he jumps out of the elevator, he fights a fucking airplane.
Yeah.
That's just great.
Yeah.
And
This
him
is
and
like-
Nat's relationship in this movie, that's also great. We get to see more of her, and we get to see like actual character development between two people, and it's lovely. It feels
Yeah.
so natural.
It's like it's the movie that I think for me made Black Widow as like this
Mhm.
amazing thing. Is not just like an amazing side character, but like as an Avenger. I think like
Mhm.
in Avengers, like she was great, but I think her whole deal as a spy works a lot better with themes of espionage and conspiracy, which is what the movie was. So perfect. 10 out of 10.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, yeah. This was the movie that sold me on the series. I remember 17-year-old Gabe just was going to theaters again with some of his buddies, and we were like, oh yeah, the new Marvel movie's coming out. It's gonna be sick. Let's go fucking see it. The pre and post Winter Soldier, Gabe is like a completely different opinion on the MCU as a whole. Like after Winter Soldier came out, I was like, okay, I'm there day one. I need to see every single one of these fucking movies the minute they come out.
Yeah.
Mood. Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I had to think. I've made a slight adjustment to the tier list, as you guys can see. It is, I guess, at this point now, the best movie. Well,
Yeah, yeah, that's
we'll-
where it is
we'll-
for me.
yeah, we'll see
It's
how
one of
we.
it's one of the only three that is up that is that high for me.
Yeah, we'll see how we react now when we talk about the first Guardians of the Galaxy, which is a very high tier movie for me. It is the one that fully goes all out into space, introduces Chris Pratt, Zoe Saldana, Bradley Cooper, Dave Bautista, Vin Diesel as the Guardians, and like it's so fun. It is like after the Winter Soldier introduced a darker, more interesting, grounded theme. This one was just like, fuck you, we're going to space. And it was great. Like the character chemistry was really good. I love Rocket. I think especially Drax has a special place in my heart because I grew up watching Dave Bautista as a wrestler. Zoe Saldana and Chris Pratt, or Star-Lord, and Gamora have a good chemistry. And Groot is Groot. You love Groot no matter what. He's a fucking walking tree.
Tree Man.
Yeah. It has, I think, some of the prettiest visuals at the time before, I think, some of the later movies. Like up until the later movies, it had some of the most like vibrant colors and settings that I think I had ever seen in Marvel so far. Because when space was starting to becoming a thing in Avengers, they had only really stuck to the stereotypical gross looking alien things. But then in here there was different kinds of humanoids, there were different creatures and shit. It looked so nice, and like you could kind of imagine it's done one of the best jobs in terms of its world building. That's like, holy shit, everything just works so well here.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking earlier about like Iron Man and how Iron Man was like taking a D tier superhero and like making something great of it. Guardians of the Galaxy took a fucking Z tier comic book series and
Yeah.
made it like one of the best selling like names of the franchise. Imagine being the fucking genius in the room who was like, let's take like a 70s era a space comic book made by Marvel that like barely anyone gives a shit about and even knows exists. Like I talked about, like there were people in my school growing up who like had Iron Man memorabilia, and it was very rare. I do not know a single person like in the world, myself included, who knew what the fuck the Guardians of the Galaxy was before the movie came out, and now it's like a household name. That's fucking ridiculous. And like if you look at like images from the comics, like the before and after the movie came out is like it's palpable. It's just straight up not the same comic book. That's something that I had a friend of mine who was into Guardians pre movie, and like even she's told me that Guardians of the Galaxy, like as a comic book before the movie came out, kind of sucks. So like that's just a whole nother dimension to it. They took a Z tier comic book that no one rightfully cared about and made like this awesome badass space movie out of it. And like fucking James Gunn, man, I love that man. He did so much for this movie. There's so much fucking personality oozing out of the Guardians movies from that
Yeah.
man.
Yeah. He like he really helped make that movie.
Yeah, I'll save my like little rant about this for later. But like an issue that I have with like a lot of the Marvel movies is that like I don't really feel like they have a personality. This movie has a fucking personality. Like
Oh yeah.
I can feel the person who made this in my fucking brain while I'm watching it.
Yeah. Man, like it must have been like at the time when it had been announced, Marvel it would have probably been like, what the fuck? Why are we doing this? Or like so many people were like, wait, what the hell? Who are they? It
Yeah.
probably like when Marvel saw the script, or I can imagine when Marvel saw the script for Guardians of the Galaxy by James Gunn, they were like, holy shit. This
Yeah,
is so
like-
out of the wall bonkers. It's so good. And it must have been like a huge risk because, like you had said, that they were no one knew the
Insane
Guardians.
risk. No one gave a shit about the Guardians. Like it's such an insane risk that it's like one of the things in the series that I have a huge amount of respect for, because like that's a ridiculous risk. They took
Mhm.
they took a chance on a brand name in the franchise that like I can say confidently Guardians of the Galaxy pre the movie was like the least given a shit about of like any of the Marvel names. Like even like I could rattle off some shit like Inhumans or whatever, and like even those would still like you might get a few head turns from those before the MCU. But like if I say Guardians of the Galaxy before movie, everyone would be like, "What? What are you talking about? You fucking freak! Get out of my house!" But like
Do you
now
know
it's
Guardians is
seen
the best
as-
movie ever made? And then some guys was like, what the hell are you doing in my house? Oh my god. Okay, so Brooke, how about you?
Oh yeah, for sure. It's like super fun, and yeah, I remember watching like once Marvel had really started like hitting off and became super popular. I remember watching like Marvel TV series on TV. Yep.
You were watching it
And-
from a cardboard box.
Yeah, I'm watching this cardboard screen. Anyway, I remember there were some episodes where Guardians of the Galaxy would be on there, and I didn't care about them. Like, they had the tree, they had a raccoon, they had Star-Lord, and I was like, I don't care about these people
Mhm.
at all. Like, I remember them being on this TV show, but I never cared. And then I completely forgot about them, honestly. And then Guardians came out, and it was like, this is such a fun movie. Like, if you come away with anything at all, it's probably going to be the soundtrack. Everyone
Oh my
loves the
God,
soundtrack
yeah.
for the Guardians
yeah.
movie so much. Like, everyone says that the second one is a little bit less memorable as the first one, but
Yeah.
they're both just like bops, super bops.
Yeah.
Like, you just sit watching the Guardians of the Galaxy, and even if you don't particularly end up liking it at the end, you like the music. You're sitting there just enjoying yourself the entire time.
Yeah.
So they at least got that going for them, and then they just doubled up on it by making such great characters, having great interactions between them, making the world so vibrant and bright. It was really fun. Like, it was interesting seeing Yondu in that movie compared to the next Guardians also. So it was fun seeing his
Oh, I
character
fucking love
there
Yondu. Yeah. Oh my
first.
god.
Like, him there, you have this idea of him and what happened between him and Peter, and it just sets up one relationship that you get a different feel for in the next one.
Yeah.
So that alone is like good.
You bring
Also, I
up
really like the prison. I don't know why. I like the prison a lot
Yeah.
and what goes on there. And stupid, I need his leg.
That was oh my god, like the humor is some of the best told in the MCU, I think. And it's interesting to like, it's interesting watching like all the movies after Guardians try to be that funny when and really they can't. They just, I guess they just don't have the chemistry that the Guardians do, or like they don't have the magic that James Gunn captured. And speaking of which, before we move on, I did want to touch on something that you had mentioned, Brooke, which is the soundtrack. There, in my head, there are only two recognizable soundtrack or like themes for this movie or for this franchise. There's the Avengers one, which is the familiar dun 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 dun, and then there's Guardians, which is fuck. How does it go? Oh my god, my brain decided to
Kinda.
fart just now.
Kind of goes against your point.
Yeah, honestly. I'm trying to remember. I think that's something
it's
like
like
that.
that.
Yeah, that's it. That makes it so fucking amazing for me because like I love movie soundtracks, and so much of the rest of the movie, minus one exception, all of it just really feels the same. Like the Avengers movies, I guess, are a given. They have to have the Avengers theme, but like no other movie has a more unique soundtrack than Guardians and the movie that I will touch on later. But fuck, I love the soundtrack of Guardians so much. It is like you had said, Gabe, the most, or like there's so much personality in Guardians that makes it stand out aside, like apart from the other ones, which is unfortunate considering we're talking about the next movie, which very much needed an identity, and it was just kind of all over the place, and that was Age of Ultron.
We're coming for your neck, Joss, you son of a bitch.
Do 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 do. Sorry, now I have Guardian stuck in my head.
I do too. Now that I fucking remember what it is.
It is quite
embarrassed. I
memorable.
clowned myself for like a good 2 seconds, or for like a good 2 minutes trying to remember.
It's like I remember two things.
Oh,
That was
shit.
wrong. I remember one thing.
Yeah. All right. So Age of Ultron was the second Avengers movie. It introduced a lot, such as the Sokovia
Maximoff
Accords
twins.
in the subsequent movies. Basically the whole Sokovia thing, the Wonder Twins, the
Wonder Twins.
the thing. So they introduced the twins, as they had just been referring to.
Maximoff.
Yeah, the Maximoff twins. I wonder who their dad is.
Yeah, I wonder.
Hmm.
That hasn't been explored at all in the extended universe. Nope.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But at the same time, it also well, aside from this, it had more of an emphasis on the Infinity Stones, and I think that's about it.
True. Yeah.
It was
Envision. Vision.
Envision. Sorry.
And the hammer. Cough, cough.
Okay, so there was a lot more to this movie than I
And
remember.
Clint's family and Natasha and Bruce.
Yeah.
Oh my god, there's so much. Yeah, this is probably saying something. There's a lot that I've just
There's a
completely
lot.
forgotten.
All the shit this movie sets up, though, it's like it's sort of like it's this movie. Part of the reason I really don't like this movie, it starts a pattern that like has shown up in a lot of the other subsequent movies that I'm really not a fan of, where like the movie seems preoccupied on setting up other shit to the point where like if they can integrate it well within the plot, like that's one thing. If you can have like Shield will show up in the movie and they'll do something for the movie, I'm like, oh hell yeah, totally down with it. But like I feel like it's a lot less fluid if characters have magic induced flashbacks that are explicitly just to set up future movies. Like that's sort of it. I think that a lot of my problems with the series as a whole start there with Age of Ultron. And Age of Ultron is still to be the worst offender, but like its webbed-toed fingerprints smear a lot of the other movies.
Oh my god, what a way of phrasing it. Brooke, how about you?
I forgot to touch on this when we were talking about Iron Man 3, but like having him have his suits of armor just come in and like fuck up shit for the bad guys with him alongside them just made me think, okay, why doesn't he just use robots all the time? And then this one kind of comes back with that, and it has him creating robots like specifically for helping out with their missions and crap. And even though in the scenes that we see of them, they're mostly just there to like pacify and help citizens and whatnot, still just makes me think like technically he could just build a crap ton of robots and not really have to do anything.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah.
And
Brooke, are you endorsing
if,
drone warfare?
sorry, what?
Are you endorsing drone warfare?
No.
Has that been your agenda this
I'm
whole
just
time?
saying. I'm just saying it's something he could have done very easily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So cough, cough. I like this movie because it gives us Petro and Wanda, though I'm really pissed off that they
Well, it
killed
gave
off
us
Petro immediately.
yeah, it gave us Wanda in the long term, but not
Not
gave-
Petro.
no.
I
It
loved
gave us
him.
Wanda and
they
2/3 of Petro.
Ah, that hurts my heart. Don't. You know what's funny? I had no idea that she was Scarlet Witch. I had a Scarlet Witch Beanie Baby, and I still had no idea that she was Scarlet Witch. Like, people were like, "Oh, I love seeing Scarlet Witch in that new movie." I'm like, "Who the fuck are you talking about? What?"
Hmm.
Yeah.
So I felt super stupid, but that's her. But it's because they didn't want to give her the super cartoony outfit, I suppose.
Or like any like Scarlet Witchy stuff. I mean, she messes with people's minds a little bit, but like, I don't know.
Yeah.
She has Scarlet powers.
She
That's what
she doesn't really do any like fuck with reality shit until like the Disney Plus series that just came
the
out.
TV series.
Yeah.
That's okay. She's
I
there.
will
I mean, I am really mad that they killed off Petro though. And oh yeah, I guess this movie does really like set up everything because like this is the last time this would be Bruce Banner, and then when we see Bruce Banner again, he's like, "Is Sokovia all right?" And it's like, "Haha, that was a while ago."
yeah.
And we get
Oh my
Zemo
God.
and Silver War, who was affected directly by Sokovia,
Yeah.
and of course the Accords being spurred on by Sokovia. So this is a very key movie, but I understand why a lot of people don't like it.
Hmm.
And even though Ultron is considered like a very weak villain, he's kind of fun.
Yeah, he has a solid presence.
Hmm.
Yeah, like I like him just being there, and like I love his voice. Like I watched the TV series that he was in. What the hell was that called? The Blacklist? I watched the Blacklist.
Yeah.
So hearing his
I've never
voice
seen
as
that, but I've heard
Ultron,
it's really
I was
good.
like, it was, and like he was just a great character in that. And then hearing his voice in this was like, oh hell yeah! And then Ultron was like him. I'm like, oh ho 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 ho. That was good.
I kind of don't like his lips though. That freaks
That
me out
kinda threw
whenever
me
I watch
off,
the
yeah.
movie.
I hate how much creepy ass fan fiction shit came out because of him.
Well,
I hate Rule.
There was
I hate Rule 34.
they made Ultron like a hunk.
Yeah, he was built.
Joss Whedon didn't
my
have to.
God.
Joss
Oh,
Whedon didn't
yeah.
have to do that, but he did it anyway. He gave Ultron a porn star bod, and then like
He was built.
Oh my God. Okay.
he looks like a fucking he looks like a bodybuilder.
He's gonna fuck the Avengers. Not fuck
He
I mean,
is.
to
the
have the whole
Avengers.
line. Have you been juicing? Like, yeah, he's it. He's big boy.
Oh my God.
Large.
So
He's thick.
I will give Age of Ultron one thing and then try to take it back as soon as possible, and that was within the Hulkbuster scene. So the
Mm.
Yeah, this is pretty
the
cool.
assembly of the Hulkbuster scene was great,
Mhm.
but the subsequent comedy in it is kind of pulling me back a little bit. The whole go to sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep, and it's like, oh, Hulk
knew
spits
you
out
were
a tooth. I'm sorry. Ugh.
I like that.
It's funny, but like considering Guardians preceded it, and that was like fucking hilarious. It's like,
But that humor
I just
really
can't
is.
take seriously how much like destruction there is in that scene. Like he's dragging
Yeah.
Hulk through the air and he scans a construction site and he's like, "Oh no, life signs injected. I guess I can destroy this skyscraper that's
Yeah.
being built."
Just ask how quickly he can buy it. He just like create the relief fund.
No
For situations
no one will die in the massive debris field of destroying an entire skyscraper.
it's a movie. You only account for the people. You don't account for the property damage. That's all fixed with plot.
Yeah.
Like the next scene after that is showing like people covered in the dust and crap. So like we see the people.
They were like,
Yeah.
boo, Avengers, y'all are shit. Okay, so where did we put this on the list? Because I don't want to put it in bad. That's unfair. Like there were.
Yeah, no, I don't have
Put
it
it
in
in
bad
there.
either. That would be unfair. I have it in worst, where it belongs.
No, just put it in meh because I
putting
have it in
meh.
good.
There were some good parts to it. Like it introduced a lot
Like
of
I still
concepts that
love
would be
watching
like,
it.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's definitely not the absolute worst.
Mhm.
I don't know
Are
what
you
I don't know
sure?
what is I don't know what is the absolute worst for me. I mean, Thor: The Dark World is probably the absolute worst for me, but I have another one that I hate more, but more for like
Oops.
other shit that
Okay.
has nothing to do with the actual movie.
All right. So now we move into, or now we're nearing the end of Phase 2, which was surprising because I thought Age of Ultron was the end of Phase 2, but apparently it wasn't because the end of Phase 2 was Ant-Man.
Oh, we're getting into it right away. Okay, great.
TBH, I thought the end of Phase 2 was Doctor Strange. That's awkward.
No, like the start of Phase 3 was Civil War. I think
When did Doctor
Was it?
Strange come out?
I don't know.
it was Civil War. Like it was it this? I don't remember.
Hang on, let me look. Yeah.
I just remember like I just remember Ant-Man being the end of the opposite villain trope, or the opposite villain thing that was happening in Marvel at the time, because like or Ant-Man's villain, Yellow Jacket, I think was just a copy of Ant-Man.
He's just yellow Ant-Man.
Yeah. with like spiky things.
He's just Obadiah again.
Yeah.
Scott isn't Stark. Instead, it's Pan. What is his name? Hank Pym. There we go.
Pym, yeah. Like having
Hank,
Paul Rudd
Hank.
as Ant-Man was a great choice. Like that was spot on, I think. The costume itself looks pretty sweet. I think given from what I remember in the actual comics and how his helmet is actually supposed to look, yeah, this one is a lot nicer. Louis, I think that's what his name is, the side character, is fantastic. I love that little montage, like just explaining shit. That's an iconic thing in an otherwise
Played by Michael Pena. Hell yeah.
It was a very unique thing in an otherwise, like, it could have been a very like run-of-the-mill Marvel origin story had it not been for those like little unique things. Aside from that, like the Ant-Man lore itself was pretty interesting, and how Hank Pym was like the original Ant-Man, and then he and his wife like helped defuse the bomb and shit. That was pretty sweet. Or I think maybe that was in Ant-Man and the Wasp. I don't remember, but I think like Ant-Man itself was fine. Like I certainly enjoyed it. Like the chemistry that Paul Rudd has with his daughter was really well developed, I think. Has like, he's a single father who's just trying to do better. And like I can get behind that. It was fun. And I just love Paul Rudd, so any thoughts?
This is a movie this is of all the MCU movies, this is probably the one I'm like the most torn on between like what I think of it as like a movie and what I think of it as like an artist. Because, and I'm not saying that in like in terms of like objective quality and like enjoyment. I'm talking about like production stuff. The production behind Ant-Man is fucking insane and pisses me off to no end. The movie is fine, but this movie angers me. Are you Dean? Are you guys at all familiar like with how this movie came about?
No.
Okay, all right. I can get into it then. Good, perfect, beautiful. So, fucking like 20 years ago, Edgar Wright, the director of like Shaun of the Dead, Scott Pilgrim versus the World, Baby Driver, all these like awesome, energetic movies with like great comedy, great writing, great action. He wanted to make an Ant-Man movie. That was like his fucking dream. He was like, I want to make an Ant-Man movie. And then Marvel started making movies, and he was signed on to make Ant-Man. He was the original writer of the script. The whole movie that he wanted to make. He wanted to make an Ant-Man heist movie with Scott Lang instead of Hank Pym as like the lead Ant-Man. He wanted to have Hank Pym be old Hank Pym and go right into Scott Lang because he wanted to do a heist movie. That was like that was his one-armed man. And so he wrote the whole script for the movie. He filmed large sections of the movie, and then halfway through production, Marvel kicks him off because he didn't want to do the scene where Scott fights Falcon over like this petty bullshit where they were like, "Oh, you don't we I didn't." He was like, "I didn't want to have this scene interrupt the flow of the plot. I wanted to just do the movie." And Marvel's like, "No, you're out. Fuck you. We're gonna get some guy." I don't even know who directed it anymore. All I can think of is Edgar Wright. All I can think of is how annoyed I am that it wasn't Edgar Wright, and then Edgar Wright had to basically just like watch his movie get turned into a different movie that like, and he'll never get to make a fucking Ant-Man movie anymore. It just bugs me.
Oh,
Not trying to make an ant pun with it bugs me, but like I don't know, that's like it's a movie that I have a really hard time being objective of, because whenever I watch it, I'm like, I know that this is fine. I know that this is completely fine. There's nothing actually wrong with this movie. It's as it is. It's a
just so
fun
happens
movie.
to fuck over someone you really enjoy.
It fucks over someone who I have a lot of respect for, and it was like it's sort of like a really damning commentary about like sort of the production behind the scenes of the franchise, to me anyway. That's sort of like it didn't really start for me there, but that was like the first time when I started to see like the writings on the wall, and where I was like, I sort of had started to get beef with the franchise and get to being as jaded about it as I am now.
Mhm.
I've been gushing about a lot of these movies, but like I'd say overall I'm pretty cynical about the franchise, and this was the movie where that started for me.
Yeah. Brooke, any thoughts?
This was also one that I watched kind of recently, and I remember not paying attention at all to the movie.
Yeah.
Like it was very entertaining the first time I watched it, but like subsequent watches, I just
Excuse me.
didn't care anymore. I don't know what it is about it, but I don't feel very engaged, which is interesting because it has a lot of moving parts. It's very interesting. It has fun characters and interactions and stuff. And I don't know. I just
It's a shame too, because like originally Ant-Man was like one of the original creators of the Avengers in the comics. So I would have expected like a larger role to play here, but like I think it's like another meh. Really. Or is it on the same level as Age of Ultron?
I'd
'Cause I
say
think,
Mez
like-
probably where it is like objectively. I have it in worse just because it just like for personal reasons, but I think like as a movie it's probably a meh.
Mm-hmm. I put it over Age of Ultron though.
Yeah.
All right. So that is the end of phase 2. We're moving now into phase 3, so the final sequence of it. And this is when I think Marvel movies like to me were really like hitting their stride, I think, when it came to not just their storytelling but like their visual effects and like their scenarios and everything. And they really started to carve out and perfect an identity in a way, and all of that kind of started, or all of that like has been developing since Civil War, which was I haven't seen Civil War in a long time, but I remember like really being excited for it. Like I think one of the first memories of the trailer coming out was like so I was in high school and the trailer just released, and I remember like a friend of mine and we were watching it together, and we were both just getting super excited after we had watched the trailer. It's like, holy shit, this is gonna be sweet. And then when I watched the movie, holy shit, it was sweet. But then with a modern perspective, and because it's been so long since I've seen it, from what I remember, things made sense. I think like a lot of the connecting angles that were getting everyone to fight each other made sense. And I realized that without the X-Men, they couldn't do the full Civil War. So what they were given was fine. Having it revolve around Bucky was an interesting angle to it. Like, you know, obviously they were focusing on the Sokovia Accords, but I think ultimately the three-way or the three-way between Steve, Tony, and Bucky was a very interesting dynamic. That one was like, holy shit, that's this, like it was enough to like cause a ripple in the Avengers, because then it blurred the line so much between not just Tony's character but Steve's, because Steve at that point, you know, as Captain America, he had been the one who was so you know, he fought for the US and he was a very like patriotic character, but because it was Bucky and a character that he loved a lot as a brother and, or, you know, as a best friend and a brother, that just made everything so much more complex, I think. Because you would expect like any thing, like you would expect, because, or actually, what am I trying to say? I think when it comes to like personal relationships like that, it really questions a lot of morality, and I really liked the direction that they went in and how all the other Avengers basically got involved. That was fun. It was directed by the Russos, so like I think they did a pretty good job of it, but I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think I've been ranting too much, so I'm gonna like keep my opinion about this movie to like a minimum. It's really good. I really like this movie. I don't have like a very strong opinion about it. I like watching it. I like how the dynamic is played. The most takeaway I think I have for this movie is that me and a good friend of mine have been arguing for years about who was actually right in the movie, and I think it just speaks to like how well written the characters were and how like well written the conflict was. That like me and a friend could have a debate that extends, like, this movie came out in 2016. We're still arguing about it. If you bring it up around us, we'll fucking get into it. Because I know I'm right, but then she knows she's right, so, you know.
Yeah.
It's not such a like one-sided issue as it appears to be, even though it's called Captain America Civil War. It makes it a little hard for it to be like nuanced, but you know.
Yeah.
It's good.
I remember when it came out, like a lot of people had a problem with it being so simplified to just the Avengers group, because I remember everyone talking about like how in the comics it was like every superhero that had ever existed was taking the sides, and it was a fight for all of their rights. It wasn't just about the Avengers, it was about all of the superpowers and having to give their identities to the government and being monitored by them and instructed by them. So I do feel like Civil War lost a piece of what it meant to like comic readers and stuff. But as a movie, it works perfectly well in the Avengers cinematic universe. It has, thinking back at it now, I'm like, it has a lot of moving parts. Like there's the whole Zemo and Bucky thing, and there's Steve Rogers and the Sokovia Accords, and there's T'Challa and his father and Bucky, and everyone else taking sides. It's just like a lot. There's a lot going on, but it never becomes like too much. Like sometimes you kind of forget about one thing or the other, like when they're fighting Bucky when he's escaping from the SHIELD facility or something, you kind of forget about the Sokovia Accords, and then all of a sudden it's just like, hey, remember, you're going to break the Accords if you do this thing. And it's like, well, that's too bad. And then even though it was somewhat relieving to have the other Winter Soldiers not actually end up being like a final conflict, because I would have felt like so much. It also felt like such wasted potential to build up these super soldiers that are even better than the Winter Soldier, who they've had a problem with in the past, and then just kill them off. It's like, okay, you can't just build up a villain like that, like a major superpower and then just be like, nah, they're all killed in their sleep. They're not going to be a problem now. So that's something I take issue with. But the action sequences in it are just so good. Like, I can watch that movie so many times just because it's...
Yeah.
Like I said with the Winter Soldier movie, this also does the same thing. It's just like the action sequences are so amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, everything's great. Like, what comes to mind first, obviously, is like the Bucky breaking out thing in the helicopter and whatnot. But then, of course, the next thing that comes to my mind is the airport scene and Spider-Man wrapping up Ant-Man or something like that.
Yeah.
Anyone have any orange slices? So that alone, honestly, just makes it a great movie for me. I love it thoroughly. Even if I have like a couple little problems, it's still just overall good.
Yeah. So I guess, is it enough to put it in the best though? 'Cause
I have
think
it.
it
It's
is.
good. I don't know if it's best for me, but
I think it may be just. Brooke, how about you? Do you think like best or great? Because I'm thinking great.
I put it in great.
Okay. And I think the reason why I'm putting it in great instead of the best is actually on the fight scenes. Like, I, like you, enjoy the fight scenes too, but I think at this point, come Civil War, we were all familiar with how Marvel likes to shoot their fight scenes, which can be nauseating sometimes. Like, they're very well done when it matters, but like, I've been spoiled lately by, I think, it's such an off thing, but after seeing how many cuts that they do in a Marvel scene, because obviously, you know, you have to comprehend characters and whatnot, after being spoiled by the likes of Kingsman's church scene and Aquaman's initial scene with Nicole Kidman's character fighting off like a bunch of like Atlanteans in one shot, it is so hard to like keep track of everyone like brawling each other when there are so many cuts. It's such a small thing, but like, oh my god, like one shot fight scenes are so visually unique that, you know, obviously that shouldn't be the norm anymore, because then it's just going to get watered down and stuff. But like, by the time Civil War had come out, so many of Marvel's fight scenes have been cut to death, and it's just, I don't know, maybe it's just my own stupid brain trying to comprehend everything, but yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a valid critique? Am I wrong here?
No, there's no such thing as invalid.
Okay,
It's an opinion. You're allowed to that.
fair enough. Okay, so moving on to Doctor Strange, which introduced magic into the MCU and quite possibly the potential for a multiverse. I think I've cooled a lot on this movie since first seeing it.
you had a weird experience with it, right? With the rival.
Yeah, I was excited to see Doctor Strange, and come its release, I was like, hey, we should go, or I was asking my family, hey, can we watch Doctor Strange? And that weekend, I think we went to go see Arrival instead, because that just seemed a little bit more interesting to them. And to be frank, like, I was like, okay. And then I came out of Arrival thinking, holy fuck, that's a good movie. Like, I can hold off on watching Doctor Strange for like another month or something after watching fucking Arrival. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Because I think especially now in hindsight, after remembering Arrival, or after remembering what Doctor Strange was, it had Benedict Cumberbatch as the titular Doctor Strange, who was all right. Like, I have certainly a lot of love for Benedict Cumberbatch, even though he is Benedict Cumberbatch to some people. And he plays the role of like an arrogant, but then eventually less arrogant sorcerer pretty well. Wong is a good side character. The Ancient One is a very good mentor side character. Caecilius is a waste of Mads Mikkelsen. And Dormammu and that sequence, or like the whole Dormammu of Come to Bargain sequence, is still one of my favorites. in the MCU in terms of sequences. Like, it is just so visually and creatively unique. That's like, oh, I didn't think he would do this. You know, just resetting the time loop over and over again and introduce the time stone. But I think ultimately, for what it was and how it incorporated magic into, or I guess to a degree, magic into an otherwise superhero heavy world, it was fine. I have fun memories of it. Like, a friend of mine really enjoys Doctor Strange, and while I wouldn't necessarily put it anything below meh. Like, it's not, it's certainly not like the amazing movie that I thought it was at the time.
I'm a little torn on this one. Not for like Ant-Man torn. I don't have any like personal guff with it. But I'm a little torn on it because I know I do like it as a movie. I think like it's very visually interesting. A lot of like the trippy aspects of it are really well done, and it's like one of the most creative Marvel movies out there. But like it's sort of weird, and it's like one of those things that sounds from like me being into the comic books before I was into the movies. So it's sort of like a have your cake and eat it too situation where I'm like, this movie is probably the most visually creative movie of the series, but also I couldn't help but being a little disappointed because like Doctor Strange is one of my favorite superheroes in the Marvel, like of the Marvel characters, and like I sort of felt like this specific movie kind of did like a disservice to his character. He was it was sort of like Asian Harry Potter almost. It was like the magic in it was magic, but it was like very standard magic. He had like attack spells and he had spells to like move stuff. And the time thing was like the most interesting spell stuff that they did.
Yeah.
But like for comparison to something like The Oath, if you haven't read The Oath is a sick graphic novel or limited series with Doctor Strange. The entire plot of The Oath is basically that Doctor Strange is murdered, and
Ooh.
in the moment of like as he's dying, he splits time into like 1 billionth of a second to solve his own murder as he's dying, and also figure out how to not die as he's dying. It's an insane series, and he like warps through dimensions and stuff to try to figure out to try to solve this crazy multi-dimensional mystery. I understand that they can't really do that as an origin story, so it's sort of an unsolvable issue that I have because I don't feel like Doctor Strange is a character who really like precludes an origin movie, because like yeah, it's not a character I think you can do like a really compelling origin story for. Like I think his origin story is like he's a doctor and then he became a wizard and then he does wizard stuff. Like Doctor Strange when he's at his best is not. It's sort of like something that I liked about his appearance in the other movies more than anything, because Doctor Strange is at his best when he's like a master of his craft, and seeing Doctor Strange learning how to become a wizard it's interesting, but like it could be so much better.
Yeah.
Like there's another plot in Doctor Strange where there's like this monster. I can't remember the actual name of it right now. It's sort of like a worm creature, and essentially it's a worm creature that Doctor Strange created to like protect him from injury. And essentially how it works is that the creature like takes his injuries. It like if he's critically injured or if he's wounded, it like transports his wounds to the monster. And then he has this story about this monster like sort of seeking revenge against Doctor Strange. And I feel like they're definitely going to do this in the sequel, so I'm looking forward to that, especially because it's by my boy Sam Raimi. But like, yeah, I feel I really liked Doctor Strange, but I was also disappointed in it. So it's in a weird space for me.
Yeah. Brooke?
It's like an enjoyable movie to watch, but it's not one I watch very often. He's he could have almost been on the same level as like Thor, but he never really quite loses his arrogant streak. Like he just becomes so confident in magic after such a short time that he's still just kind of like there, knowing that he can do what he needs to do all the time. So he doesn't have that endearment that I felt towards like Thor, because yeah, he doesn't have like the same process as that. I do find I enjoy the movie for like tackling like injuries and disabilities and stuff. I find it's interesting, even though it's kind of like brushing it off with that one guy who was like paralyzed and he went to the wizards and was able to walk again now and he's fine. But it's like that's not really how it works. But it's great that Steven still just has like shaky hands and he can never be a doctor again. And he has to take on a different craft and he has to find who he is in something else and know that he is not what his hands are and he's a whole person itself. So I like that aspect of it. And I think that's quite beautiful. Like when they have that other wizard come, because he's like, I can't do it, it's my hands. And then they have that other one come over and he doesn't have hands at all. And it's like, ha 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 ha. Look what you can do. So I think that's nice. I do find the Ancient One a very interesting character. I like that she delved into like the dark magic stuff, and that's why she was so powerful. So she's like not all that she preaches, and it's interesting that way. And like fighting off the people from their headquarters was an interesting scene, especially with him like using what's around him. And when he gets the cape, that's very fun. I like when he gets the cape. The cape is a whole character on its own, and it's great.
Yeah. So then, I guess barring everything that we've said, would we put it in meh or good? Because I think it's
I'd say it's good.
good, yeah.
Yeah, I have it in good too.
Yeah. All right, Guardians 2.
This is my favorite Marvel movie. No cap.
Ooh.
Wow.
This is, yeah, hands down for me. This is, yeah, that's my favorite. Dean, I'll let you do your thing, and then I'll gush.
Okay. Well, Guardians 2 introduces like the biggest introduction to this is Kurt Russell's character, who I've completely forgotten about, but it's basically, he's basically a celestial, I think.
Yeah,
That's
he's a planet.
Yeah, so he is revealed to be Star-Lord's dad, which introduces a father-son dynamic into Guardians, which is pretty welcome, I think, considering how they had then teased that a little bit, or they had been playing around with that in Guardians 1 with Yondu. But it's nice, like it was a nice wrap up. Speaking of which, it was a nice wrap up to Yondu's story. The iconic, he may have been your dad, but he ain't your daddy kind of thing. Love that. There was a lot more humor, I think, to Drax's character that I think was very, very, very welcome. I think like Dave Bautista, I have a little bit of a bias for. He knows how to fucking like comedically time jokes. He's done so well. Star-Lord and Gamora's relationship also developed quite a bit, and I think Rocket Raccoon and Groot were still pretty lovable. Like, how can you not enjoy those, like that first opening sequence to Mr. Blue Sky of them fighting this like giant alien? It's wonderful. Like that's the kind of uniqueness in a fight scene that I don't like, that is so few and far between, and it's only really through like a director like James Gunn to make that happen. Like it's like little baby Groot just dancing around while his comrades are like getting fucked over. It's hilarious, and it's like very welcome, I think, because like it's a way to like, it's a way to get the movie off on a high note, but it's also like editing wise very, very visually stunning, and again very flashy. There's a lot of amazing visuals in it, particularly when it comes to the planet, when it comes to the home planet Ego, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but overall, like it's still like a very top tier movie. I think like it's one of those ones where it exceeds its sequel, or where it exceeds its first movie for me. Brooke, do you want to go before Gabe goes off?
No, he can just go off.
All right, Gabe.
Okay. I fucking love this movie so much. You basically covered a lot of what I was going to say. I think they upped a lot of what made the first movie good, and they took a lot of what made the first movie good, and they sort of ramped it up. The humor is a lot better, and has a lot better comedic timing. Uh, the characters are a lot better, and they're a lot more fleshed out. I love a lot of the development, especially on uh, Rocket. A lot of that stuff's really good. The character development of Yandu is top top fresh. That's some good shit in this movie. His whole dynamic with Peter in the movie, and like this whole idea of like parentage being like an earned thing and not just like an inherent like biological fact. That's some good shit. I love the fact that this movie has that going for it. I love themes. I know the Game of Thrones writers think that themes are something for eighth grade book reports, but I fucking disagree. Themes are great. Themes are a good thing to have.
Yeah.
A story having a theme throughout the story that's built around, that's good shit. And this movie does it really fucking well. It's really heartfelt and like kind of beautiful and weird that it's in this movie that sort of has this reputation of being like the wacko of the series. Like this, like when Guardians of the Galaxy 1 came out, it's like, oh, this is when Marvel goes gonzo. This is when Marvel goes ape shit. But then like they have this very touching ending, and it sort of comes out of nowhere and hits you like a fucking truck, and it's great. And Ego's a great villain.
Mm.
I mean, speaking of like characters who are C tier, making Ego the Living Planet Peter's dad is such a fucking inspired move. That's not from the comics. I want to clarify something. That is not in the comics at all. That is something that James Gunn literally took. He was like, okay, this random character, Ego the Living Planet, who in the comics is just a planet with a face. It's like a joke character. And I'm gonna make that not only the main villain of my movie, but also Peter's father. Like, what a fucking this series just keeps on going with like these ridiculous risks, and it pays off every time. 'Cause James Gunn knows he knows what he's doing. He's very good at like making these series how he wants to. He knows what they are. He's not trying to win the Oscar for best penis pump, but he's doing like he's doing what he does best. He knows what he's doing. Yeah, I fucking love this movie. I could gush about this movie for hours. I'm not going to do that. I've gushed enough on this episode.
We also
So
have 8
yeah,
more
this
movies.
is my
So.
this is just my favorite one.
Mhm.
I love everything about it. I could watch this movie a billion times and never get sick of it.
Yeah, with Guardians 2, after Guardians 2 was Spider-Man Homecoming, which was a very welcome surprise, I think, in terms of Spider-Man movies, because at this point everyone was familiar with Spider-Man. Like, we all knew the Sam Raimi movies, we all knew the Amazing Spider-Man with Andrew Garfield, but this one was, and thankfully, not an origin story. We all, like, Peter had already been established, and at that point, like, it's as if Marvel knew, or Marvel Studios knew, that yeah, Spider-Man is probably the most famous Marvel character that we have, if not one of the most famous. So they were like continuing his story, and this one is honestly like it's I'd put it in great, because Michael Keaton is a great villain in The Vulture. Tom Holland as Spider-Man is probably still one of my favorite live action Spider-Man. Ned is a great side character. Zendaya is a great addition to the cast, despite just kind of being there. Like, she plays a larger role in Far From Home, but for now, she's great. I love seeing Zendaya. I love Zendaya. The whole thing about Tony having a large influence in Spider-Man's character is up for debate, but considering how Spider-Man had his suit and shit, like all of that in the comics, like he did that all by himself, and then I think, considering context, this is probably like one of the better ways that they could have done this. Like already Peter, or Tom Holland's Peter, was already really smart, but like having that dynamic with Tony just added, I think, another extra layer to the Spider-Man that we know already, because then it's it gives us a father figure, it gives us a tangible mentor in a way too, and that, I think, was welcome compared to the previous stories where it was Peter just with Aunt May. And while those are great stories too, like I'm not trying to knock on that, but like I don't know, the addition of Iron Man was a great dynamic, and I always just love seeing Spider-Man on screen. So
I mean, I don't want to go off on this movie because I don't hate it, but I've never been a huge fan of the Iron Man Jr. thing that they've been going with these Spider-Man movies. I do understand in context that's how he was introduced, but I feel like I don't know. It feels like it's just robbing Spider-Man of his Spider-Man-ness, which I know is a total dweeb thing to say, but I don't know. The guy who directed Spider-Verse, said something about the upcoming Spider-Man movie, and he I think he was talking about how Doctor Strange is going to be in the next Spider-Man movie, and the Spider-Verse director said, "I hope he's just a special guest star. I don't know why Spidey needs a mentor. One of the things I always liked in the old comics was that he was a loner. He was grappling things on his own. He was not beloved or accepted like the Avengers or the Fantastic Four." And I agree with that. I think a lot of the appeal of Spider-Man is that he's not a Tony Stark. He's not a character who has the world on his side, who has private planes to build stuff. He built this shit. He built the shit on his own. He did all this stuff completely alone, and he is a hero for it. He's not backed by a billionaire. He's just a kid who he got a superpower and then built some web stuff and did hero stuff totally on his own. No mentor, no benefactors, just being a hero. I think that's part of what makes it so universally appealing and very apropos to stuff like Superman or Batman, because Superman is not Superman until he gets to the big ice cave and he sees his space dad, and his space dad gives him his pajamas and he starts flying. Or Batman isn't Batman until he invests in GameStop and gets enough money to build bad dildos that he throws at people.
So that's how he fucking did it. Okay.
Yeah, I know it sounds I know it probably sounds sort of geeky to get upset that it's not Spider-Man. It's not Spider-Man done correctly. But I think there's a very evident and stark contrast with how people react to Spider-Verse, how Spider-Verse is Spider-Man. Spider-Verse is I know Spider-Verse is not a part of the MCU, so I can't go off about how fucking good Spider-Verse is.
It is.
So I'll just say Spider-Verse is that's the top tier.
Yeah, if it were part of Spider-Verse, it would, or if it were part of the MCU, Spider-Man or Into the Spider-Verse is easily the best movie ever.
Oh yeah,
because it's literally my profile picture.
Yeah,
yeah.
I think that's in a whole league of its own, because it captures the greatness that is the Spider-Man mythos, I think. And while I've stated that while the dynamic between Peter and with Peter and Tony is welcome, in my opinion, I understand the criticism that a lot of people have found value in in Spider-Man, especially Peter Parker's Spider-Man, because he did all of that on his own.
Yeah.
Right. And he has been, like, for people who are familiar with the movies, he became Spider-Man he became Spider-Man and owned that mantle on his own, even with Amazing Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Right? Like, all of that was done himself, and he didn't need anybody. That inspires a lot of people.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's kind of touched on, or that's kind of improved upon later in Far From Home, but we'll get there when we get there.
Yeah. That's not even my biggest issue with this movie though. My biggest issue is it's sort of a weird like reverse issue with Michael Keaton's villain in it. He is too good of a villain almost.
Yeah.
They perfected the formula of like understanding that like a compelling villain has to have a compelling motivation. But then they fucked up and they gave a villain such a compelling motivation that I would even say morally incorrect to disagree with him. He's just right.
Yeah.
He got completely fucked by by basically Tony Stark like wanting to profit off of the destruction that he caused instead of average like working class people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want. I know. Probably shouldn't get into communist rhetoric in this Marvel discussion, but that's how it is. Tony Stark fucked the proles, and the proles fought back. And it's also worth noting, almost nothing in the movie would have happened if Peter hadn't like been like stupidly and impulsively intervened and shit. He would have stolen some supplies and everything would have gone on schedule and no one would have been killed.
Yeah,
Some
ultimately
banks would have
Bojo
been
would have just been
robbed.
minding his own business.
Exactly. He would have just been minding like that he keeps saying throughout the movie, like, okay, this is my last job. I don't want to do this anymore. After this last job, we'll get the money from this. And then Spider-Man keeps interrupting it, and he's like, okay, well, I guess I have to do another last job because I didn't make any money off that last job. But
Yeah.
and each one last job that he has to do is like possibly more violent. Like it goes from like making a sale from a van in a park to like making a sale on a boat that ends up with half of the boat being destroyed to the last one being trying to hijack a plane, which causes the fucking plane to crash. Like if Spider-Man just hadn't intervened, they would have sold a bunch of guns in a park from a van, and nothing would have happened.
Yeah. They really emphasize the spider in Spider-Man. He's really just a pest. I'm kidding.
Nice.
I can't make an "it bugs me" joke. I already did that with Ant-Man.
All right. Anyway, Brooke, do you have any thoughts before we move on to, or have we said what we said?
Yeah, I think you said what you said. Like, I like Tom Holland as Spider-Man. People have pointed out that it's kind of like annoying by this point that we just always have Spider-Man stuck in a time loop of high school, and it's like the executives of these projects are like, Spider-Man has to be youthful, and that's something that Spider-Verse did so well. Is like we got older Spider-Man that people ended up loving, but they keep going back to this teenage high school Spider-Man, and it's like I like Tom Holland, and he's very cute as a Spider-Man, and he's still like a very fun, naive and learning Spider-Man. But I hope if they do another reboot that it'll just be an older one.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the high school story is getting kind of old now. So yeah.
Anyway, we'll now move into I think what is inarguably the best Thor movie, and that's Ragnarok. I think I say inarguably, and you guys can disagree with me if you need to, but compared to the compared to all the depictions of Thor so far, what's the director's name? I don't want to butcher it.
Taika Waititi.
Yeah, Taika Waititi.
It could be Taika or Taika. I don't actually know.
Okay, well,
I think it's Taika.
Okay, yeah.
I heard Taika Waititi. Yeah.
Okay, so Taika Waititi made Thor so much more than just a god. He made him lovable, I guess. Like he made him so much cooler and so much more so much more heroic in a sense. And I think had it just been the Ragnarok story, that could have easily like thing. I think that could have seriously done some damage to Thor's credibility at that point, because Ragnarok is obviously the destruction of Asgard, which is a big climactic thing in Norse myth, and it does end that way in Ragnarok the movie. But I love how they approached this. It was so different compared to everything else, and that's saying something, because what happens is Hela is brought back, or in Norse myth it's just Hel, but Hela is played by Kate Blanchett, great choice, and just decides to fuck over everything. And as great a villain as she is, the whole plan of like resurrecting an army when she's already so powerful in Asgard, that kind of bugs me already. But like, you're basically just giving everyone henchmen to kill, I guess. But anyway, what else? The Planet Hulk story, which I wasn't really familiar with, was also a very welcome addition, especially considering how Thor ends up on the junk planet, which I forget what the name is. What else? Valkyrie's introduction is great, because I love the story of the Valkyries, and Tessa Thompson is amazing. And yeah, Taika Waititi as, like, he not just as a director, but as a character in what's his name? What's Taika Waititi's character in
Korg.
Rockman.
Korg.
Korg?
His name is Korg, isn't it?
Korg.
I think so.
Yeah.
Korg.
Sorry. So Korg is a great comic relief. Like, I think second only to, I think probably Rocket. Rocket's a great comic relief character. Or actually, no, Drax is a great comic relief character. Well, now at least, but yeah, I really like this. It's the best of the Thor movies, but in terms of our ranking, I don't know where we're gonna put it.
For me, I have it in best.
All right, well, that was easy.
Pretty good.
That's like.
This is best Loki, by the way. Best Loki.
Best Loki.
Best
yeah.
Loki. Best
Best
Hulk.
Loki. So hot.
Best
Hot
Asgard.
Loki.
Best Thor.
Yeah. Best Hulk.
So much of the movie is fucking improvised too. I love that. I just love the rapport amongst them. That they just unscripted comedy movie. It's just great.
Mhm.
I also love the Planet Hulk stuff. Planet Hulk and World War Hulk are like two of my favorite Hulk runs. I mean, I say that they're the only Hulk runs I've read, and they're both fantastic. Now that they've done Planet Hulk, I would be elated if they did World War Hulk. That would make me warm inside. I don't know how they could do that with I don't know how they could fit that into Thor Love and Thunder, but hope they do it. Would be good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think Hulk, like Mark Ruffalo's Hulk,
Ragnarok?
definitely deserves like his own chance, I think.
Oh yeah, if they tried to do a World War Hulk movie just as its own, I would be very down for it.
Most likely they could do its own TV show, right? Wait, don't they have a scheduled Hulk TV show coming?
I think they're doing She-Hulk.
Oh, okay.
Because I don't think they
Maybe
actually have the rights to do like a Hulk standalone thing. Like that's why he's always a side character.
Dang.
Oh, damn. All right. Well, speaking of which,
Also, just wanted to say Ragnarok was the most quotable of them all. Like I quoted the most.
Oh yeah.
I just remember more lines.
we are not doing Get Help. Get help! Get help! Please. I need to get off this planet. That's it. I don't know many other quotes. Anyway.
Oh yeah, it's like a circle, but not a real circle. More like a freaky circle.
There was this one time my brother, he turned himself into a snake, and he knows that I love snakes. The snake to admire it, and he turned back into himself, and he said, "Ah, it's me," and then he stabbed me. We were 6 at the time.
Yes.
Oh my god. Thank God for Taika Waititi and James Gunn for making such amazing personality driven movies.
I love how in that specific scene as Chris Hemsworth is like improvising this crazy snake monologue. You could see like Mark Ruffalo's fucking expression turn to like, wait, we're going script. What is this? What are you talking about, Chris?
Yeah.
It's perfect.
All right. Black Panther. Great.
Black Panther good.
Only good?
Black Panther, great.
Oh, yeah, I have been good. But yeah, Black Panther great.
Okay. Black Panther is great. Rest in peace, Chadwick Boseman.
Yeah.
Just there's so many good things about that movie. I think the only reason why I wouldn't bump it up to the best really is because I don't know.
I find the first half really boring. That's why it's just good for me.
Yeah.
Like all the
Yeah,
stuff
heard a
with
lot of complaints.
Andy Serkis's character.
No, yeah, right. I forgot about
Yeah,
that.
true, yeah. I think maybe that's it.
Yeah.
That's probably the reason for me.
It's like
Yeah.
the first 40 minutes of the movie, and I haven't heard. It's like no one remembers it because it's just. I
It's
think I
fine.
fell asleep during that part to be the first time I saw it.
Yeah, I don't really have many fond memories of the first half, but like once Killmonger assumes his role as the antagonist or as the lead antagonist, I'm like, fucking hell. Anyway,
Mhm. Yeah, I heard a lot of people like complain just that it was like a very, very basic movie plot formula.
mhm.
Like, it was like strictly that, and that's why they didn't find it like best.
Yeah.
Just didn't break anything, and it was just a
Okay.
regular story.
Yeah.
Human hero. There we go. Yeah.
Okay. Because I want to have enough discussion time for both the final Avengers movies, I am going to petition we put the remaining 3 movies, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Captain Marvel, and Far From Home, in meh.
I honestly have all 3 of them. I have both of them. I have Ant-Man and the Wasp and Captain Marvel in bad, and I have Far From Home in worst. To be honest, I don't really like any of those movies.
Brooke?
I have Ant-Man and the Wasp in good. I have Far From Home in meh, and I have Captain Marvel in bad.
So yeah, all in meh.
Yeah.
All
I
right.
guess.
I mean, obviously it's indecisive, but I think it'd be too long trying to rationalize it. Like, we can all say one thing about each movie, right? I mean, Ant-Man and the Wasp, nothing really happened. Captain Marvel really shouldn't have come this late. And Far From Home probably should have waited until the start of Phase 4.
Yeah. Far From Home is just Tony Stark has too big of a presence of a movie. He's dead in. That's my take.
Yeah, they probably should have waited like a while and just let everyone grieve after Endgame. Like, Far From Home would be a great way of starting season, or like, Phase 4. And the whole notion of like putting the future of the universe to, or the future of the cinematic universe to Spider-Man is great, but I think, I don't know, Endgame ended on such a climactic point, and we'll get to that in a second, that why try to soften the blow, I guess. All right. Do you guys want to elaborate on those other 3 movies, or do you want to just get to Infinity War?
I don't really have a tall opinion on Ant-Man and the Wasp. I think my opinion on Captain Marvel, it kind of transparently only exists to set her up to appear in Endgame, and like it's just not a good formula for a good movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like Brie Larson. I don't
I
like
like Brie Larson as an actress.
Yeah.
I don't know if I like her in that movie, but I like her as an actress.
Yeah. Brie Larson on YouTube is fun. But I think, yeah, the main thing that like kind of dampens my enjoyment of Captain Marvel is that it's just an origin story so late into the game. Like, everyone's already established, right? If you're going to establish new characters, wait for the next phase. Anyway.
They needed her for Infinity War. Yeah.
Yeah.
I put Ant-Man and the Wasp in good because I really like Louise in this one. He's very funny. He's even funnier than the first one, in my opinion. And I really like Ghost, and I hope that Ghost comes back again because I enjoyed her character and the fact that she was just a suffering person, not actually evil.
Yeah.
And I did think it was funny about the house arrest stuff coming back to fuck up Scott after Civil War. And that was funny.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like Captain Marvel because, yeah, it was just basic setup hero, and it was clearly just for the final battles and stuff like that. And she just wasn't a compelling character to me. Like, everyone was always telling her to stop being so emotional, but she was like the least emotional person I ever saw. Like, she was just so blank. I didn't feel anything.
Yeah.
From her as a character. And then Far From Home, I was just kind of like, like, I watched it and it was entertaining enough to watch, but I didn't come away feeling really anything from it. So I didn't care.
Yeah. All right. Now we'll move into Avengers Infinity War. Having Thanos properly as the main villain, it unites everybody. The Guardians, Doctor Strange, Captain America, and his squad of people, Wakanda. It basically just like brings everyone together to fight the big evil. But as it turns out, the big evil is a lot more relatable and to a degree likable than we all kind of previously expected. 'Cause Thanos is, in my opinion, the strongest villain that Marvel has established thus far, and that is saying something considering Michael B. Jordan fucking killed it as Killmonger. But I think as a big bad threat, no one could have done it better as Thanos, and I think Josh Brolin just helped like bring an extra dimension to it. But like, this Thanos had conviction, he had determination, and although like, you know, like people were always kind of like, yeah, you can kind of sympathize with Thanos, he just wanted to bring order to like a chaotic galaxy. Like, no, he wants to wipe out half a bunch of people. That's still pretty fucked up. He is the villain, but just how he carries himself makes his presence so good. And I think that's largely due in part to why Avengers Infinity War is probably still my favorite between that and Endgame. Without or with such a strong lead, it just makes everyone have more determination than anything. Like Gamora, like Star-Lord's, or like Peter's character arc with, or Peter's relationship with Gamora is affected because of Thanos. A lot of Tony's inner demons have been a result of Thanos wanting to invade in the first place in New York. To a degree, what is it? It's because of it's because of Thanos that the Avengers kind of all come back together. We lose Vision in Infinity War, and arguably for a time, dramatic build up to Endgame was the snap, which I forget what the actual event was called, but everyone just kind of still refers to as the snap, where Thanos won, which I don't think a lot of people, like, certainly I didn't anticipate that, and I walked out of the theater thinking, oh fuck. Like, I remember my sister and we sat on the porch trying not to be emotional. Because we had lost Wanda, we lost Vision to a degree because he was already fucked. We lost Bucky, we lost Spider-Man. That was huge. And learning that was
like all of the Guardians.
Yeah, all of the Guardians
except for Rocket.
Yeah, we lost T'Challa and
Sam.
Yeah. I think, like, I'll get to my rationale with Endgame, or I'll get to my rationale with Endgame later, but I think having the final story, or having the snap kill off conveniently all of the new Avengers and only have the original 6 to kind of resolve everything was both nice and a little bit bad, and I'll get to that later. But yeah, let's hear what you guys have to say about Infinity War.
Great man, good. good villain, but he's also hopped up on Malthusian bullshit. I can't really blame him for that as a man. He's at the whims of writers who think overpopulation is real, but I think I would agree Infinity War is better than Endgame just by Thanos being there. He's a solid villain. He kind of looks like a raisinette, but like like he do.
Yeah. Brooke?
Oh wow, all my thoughts have gone.
I feel that.
Oh gosh, I can only think of Endgame. This is horrible.
Okay, so let's just move on to.
The battle is interesting. Hold on, okay, the battle is interesting. Wait, what happens before that? It is tragic that people like blame Tony for not having everyone together, but he was just about to make the phone call to Steve before freaking Squidward showed up.
Okay, wait. Can we put a pause on this for like 5 minutes? I have to go to the washroom.
Sure.
Okay, so it'll
Yeah.
give us time to like relax and stuff too, because we've been talking for 2.5 hours. All right, I'm back.
Eh.
So we're talking about Infinity War. I think actually before we get to Endgame, one thing that I wanted to discuss was actually Thor. And there was this whole thing of like apparently, a lot of Thor's development in Ragnarok had suddenly been undone by Infinity War. And I don't necessarily think that was for the worst, cuz like Ragnarok definitely did take Thor in a new direction, but at the same time, like, for how he was portrayed in Infinity War, I like the character. Like, I like it. Like, he, like he's carrying himself more with a lot more, or he's carrying himself with more strength that was familiar with the older Thor movies, but he still has a lot more. He still has a lot more character to him now after Ragnarok, which will, I guess, eventually touch on with Endgame. So where are we gonna put Infinity War?
I have it in good. That's my take.
I do have it in best.
All right, well then put in the median, put in great. Now, Endgame, the 3-hour-long finale to the Infinity War saga. A lot of shit happened here, but it was basically featured around the core 6. Trying to cope with the fact that Thanos won. And to be honest, coming out of this with my own current perspective, like, let's not kind of discuss some of the highlights of this movie, because I'm pretty sure a lot of us are familiar with what's happened to it, because it's the one that is freshest in terms of its timeline. It was released in 2019, but there was a lot of potential with this movie that I think it was hard to surpass Endgame it was hard to surpass Infinity War when Thanos won. Like, having half the universe gone is obviously pretty shitty, but incorporating time travel into it, or incorporating time travel as a means of remedying the universe, oh no. It is so finicky playing with time travel in any sense. And while I think they did a decent enough job doing things up until kind of around the end, oh dear, I was very, very, very worried, because it meant things. So as played in the movie, it meant like going back to signature spots throughout the movie, and basically the entirety of Endgame is just a swan song to the original 6, as you guys, I'm pretty sure, are aware. And I think that is a nice enough sentiment, but like up until this point, I think it would have been more interesting to have some of the newer Avengers make that about them. I guess like establishing a future thing. Like, should that have been, like, would that version have been any better? Probably not. But yeah, it's a nice way of like. My thoughts are all over the place, but like, yeah, I think ultimately as a package for the original 6, it was fine. It certainly didn't have that compelling villain in Thanos anymore because his conviction was over. So they had to rely on a more evil, still on the hunt Thanos, which was, to be honest, not as convincing, or maybe not as like convicting, I guess, whichever one of those words is, but like he didn't have the authority and the power and the drive that Infinity War Thanos had, and I think that was what kind of took it away from me. Yeah, what do you guys think on the swan song for the Infinity Saga?
I think Thanos was kind of lame in this movie, to be honest. Like, he was so... Like, he was such a good villain in Infinity War. Like, this grape showed up and he starts, like, monologuing like he's like a Greek villain or something. And I'm like, hell yeah, you shriveled grape. Tell me all about it. But then he shows up in this movie and like he's still a great man, but now he's just an angry great man, and he's like talking about inevitability and stuff, and I'm like, I don't care. I kind of don't care.
Yeah.
Yep. That's exactly my thoughts. It's just 2014 Thanos. Like, he didn't have any of the connections or the experience of the Thanos that we got to see in the Infinity War. He didn't have any connection to these characters. He was just there to beat them, and I hated that. Like, I did like the Wanda scene and him being like, I don't even know who you are, and her saying, you will, like, fucking powerhouse. She's great. But we don't have, that was part of the heartbreak of Infinity War, with like Thanos fighting Tony on that planet. Was just, he gave him respect, right? He literally said that I respect you, Tony Stark. I hope they tell your story. Like, he respected these people. He didn't want to like just kill people. He had a purpose, and he felt that this was the means to get to that purpose. But this Thanos was literally just, it felt like he was just there to be a big bad. He lost all dimension. Just big bad, gonna kill everyone, gotta defeat him. So it was quite sad to see that. And I was very upset when I figured out that Endgame was gonna be a time travel movie, because I'm not particularly fond of time travel movies or the time travel gimmick to get things fixed. I knew at the end of Infinity War, when everyone tested away, that they'd end up probably doing something like that to get everyone back, because it would have been too big of a loss to have all of those people just actually dead. But I was still upset when they're like, yeah, we're going to go back in time. I was like, no. And then they did it not in a great way, I think, because it brought up continuity errors. And it's like, how is Steve at the end of this movie? That's not how this should have worked, the way that they explained it. But okay, whatever, fine.
Yeah, that shit made absolutely no sense.
Yeah.
No. Also, I just want to be very upset for a moment about the fucking Hulk scene in the goddamn cafeteria with the fucking selfies and the
Where he
whole
dabs.
long... Yeah, it's just a drawn-out fucking scene, and it's so awkward because it goes on for so long, and Scott being awkward with the kids, and I hated it.
Yeah.
I hated it, and I was even more mad when I found out they cut out that kneeling scene when everyone kneels for Tony's sacrifice.
Oh,
and they left that in. I was so livid. I was like, how dare you? This
is just a warning for anyone
anarchy.
who this is just a warning for anyone who ever has to like meet with Brooke. Do not piss her off.
No,
She will
at
kill
least
you.
not this way. I was so mad. That made me the most mad. When something about that movie that I don't like, the first thing that comes to my head is that fucking scene. Fuck that shit. Bullshit.
Yeah.
I hope I am allowed to curse because I am doing it.
We've been cursing, dude.
We've
I
been
know.
cursing this entire time.
But it just feels like I'm doing a lot right now.
That's fair. Like the whole thing with writing a swan song movie, as I've kind of put it, is that nostalgia really is a big influence on it. And nostalgia, more than anything, is something I have very much cooled with. Or it's like something that I haven't really been so warm about anymore, because when it comes to nostalgia, that just means revisiting like very familiar moments. And while that's fine in small doses, having an entire second act on that can be so unoriginal. Like I get the point of like, I get the point of like going back in time to get the Infinity Stones and reverse the snap. But at that point, it's more or less just the Avengers being desperate. Not it's not being able to be content with what had happened. Like it would have been a hell of a lot more interesting a movie if they didn't go that route. Like I would love to see if they had just all decided to live with this and not do anything about it. Holy shit, that'd be interesting. But I guess, as a close for the Infinity Saga, I don't really think there was any other way to do it. Right? Like as great and grandiose as the final battle was, like there were a lot of cool signature throwback moments and like some cool moments in and of itself, like Steve picking up Mjolnir and the portal scene with everyone coming back, Steve saying Avengers Assemble for the first time I think in ever, and the actual construction of Tony snapping, like there were so many cool moments in the movie, but I don't think overall as a story it certainly as a story wasn't my favorite compared to Infinity War. Infinity War had a much more concrete original story with a compelling villain and driven characters to stop him. That's what makes a good thing. That's what makes a good story. And suddenly for a huge multi-billion-dollar franchise to end on a very familiar good versus evil story, it's like, man, I don't know how to feel about this. Like, I think in my head, had the idea of like some of the newer Avengers mixing it up and saving the world that way, that would be more interesting, I think. But I don't think it would have made any sense considering, it was a movie about the original six, and it should have ended as a movie with the original six. It's just that, I don't know, there was so much that they could have done to make it a little bit more original rather than relying on nostalgia and throwbacks.
I think my biggest gripe with it is I sort of brought this up with Infinity War, but it's also a problem in Infinity War because it's like the setup. But I think my biggest gripe with Endgame is how like Thanos ultimately is never like actually confronted on like, I don't want to sound pretentious, but like an ideological level. Like I don't know. If I feel like Endgame has weird conclusions about Thanos' like, because okay, like on the real, the whole idea of overpopulation being like, that's like, it's like this major threat that overpopulation is like going to cause the end of the world because we're going to run out of resources. That's a really old and like long debunked belief that the whole reason that belief basically exists is because it was created by people to support like ethnic cleansing. But that was the whole reason for its existence. and like people still use it in movies to this day because like on paper the idea that there are lots of people and not enough resources, that just sounds logical, but like the fact of the matter is there's more than enough resources for nearly double the population that we have right now. And the problem is like resource distribution and like wealth hoarding and like who's actually in control of where the resources go that causes stuff like world hunger. It's not World hunger is not like such a simple issue as there are just too many people to feed all of them. It's that there's not enough food being like properly supplied, and like stuff is being hoarded by like people who just don't need all these resources. But like the way Endgame ends with them like with it just being reversed, Thanos is never like sort of confronted about this belief. Thanos is never like really proven wrong by anyone. The closest they get is when Doctor Strange like confronts him in Infinity War, but even that ends with like they talk for a little bit, but then just as Thanos is like whipping off a quip about like how the strongest what is it, the hardest choices require the strongest wills, something like that.
I think so.
And then Doctor Strange, like, he gets up and is like, okay, we're fighting now. And I feel like it has weird conclusions about Thanos' whole belief system. Like, it's something that I've noticed a lot with Marvel recently, but it's very troubling in the case of Thanos. Like, where with Killmonger and the Vulture, they're both villains who like have a belief, and their belief is ultimately right, but like the way they're going about it is wrong. That sort of thing. And I feel like I've just never felt sort of comfortable with the idea that Endgame's conclusions are that Thanos is ultimately right, but his actions are wrong, because he's not ultimately right, and it's kind of fucked up to suggest that he is ultimately right. I don't mean to get political about it, but like, I don't know. That's always bothered me about like his characterization in those movies.
Yeah.
Well, I would like to say that, yeah, they do try and make it seem like he's right, but like they also prove that his mentality is wrong, because what happens to Earth after everyone gets zapped? It looks horrible. No one's really thriving there anymore. It clearly hasn't been solved. Someone pointed out the fact that, well, he's telling Gamora, like, no one starves on her planet anymore. Crime rates have gone down. He's lying, because in Guardians, when she's introduced in the prison scene, it says that she's the last of her species, which means that her planet died out after. So it does. The universe has actually given like evidence that he is wrong. They just don't say it out loud, which is still a problem. So I agree with you.
Okay, that's fair. I hadn't actually thought about it. I always thought that was just like a continuity error with Gamora's whole thing about like her being the last of her kind. I just thought that was just like a retcon or something.
Yeah.
It's just his manipulation.
Yeah, I didn't think of it like that either, actually.
Well, he probably wouldn't want to tell her that, yeah, my plan failed on your planet and everyone else is dead. So
yeah. I will give Endgame like props for a few things. Definitely I think Tony being the one to snap the universe back into, I don't want to say normalcy, but like to where the good guys win. That was, I think, probably the best way of doing it. Because so far, like, a lot of the Infinity Saga had been started and influenced a lot by Tony. And to have it end by his hand is probably like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Another point of praise, I think, also is the portal scene. Like, as much as I've cooled on throwbacks and nostalgia sometimes, man, that was great. Like, that was a really cool moment, I think, like having everyone assemble. Kind of weird to have just the bad guys not attacking while they do that, but I mean, why ruin
Anime rules, bro.
Exactly.
You don't attack someone while they're charging up.
Yeah.
you gotta wait for the anime girl to have her cool power shifty costume change.
Exactly.
Etiquette, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the
Cinematic.
etiquette of superhero fights or super fights, I think.
Yeah.
Um,
I would say that I hated that end battle because it just whatever.
yeah.
People fighting people, not much goal in mind other than try and get thing to Van, but Van theory is stupid because you have to go specific places. But it was cinematically pretty, like seeing Steve at the front, like charging head on like the one shot, like kind of pulled back, and you just see like silhouettes on that destroyed landscape and like kind of a faded, I don't know, like sky. Just that was pretty. Also, the stupid. Okay, I shouldn't bash on it too hard, but that woman empowerment scene was so forced.
Oh yeah, that I
That it
didn't want to
made
say
me
it.
fold my eyes in the back of my head. You're allowed to say it because it was so horrible. I was watching
Yeah.
The Mandalorian the other day, and the thought popped into my head. I'm like, this show knows how to do freaking women empowerment. Who are all the supporting characters following Mandalorian right now? Women, and it felt completely natural. And then Endgame just went, look at all these women right here in this section of the battle because they're supporting another woman. Whoa!
Oh my god, yeah.
Oh, so gross
I-
and unnatural, and I was mad. I'm like, why? This is not the time.
Yeah, in the moment I thought it was like, oh, that's kind of corny, but I mean, whatever.
You can
And
like
then now,
you
I guess just now it's been like, oh god, there's so many other ways to do this better. And you're right, like with the Mandalorian, Brooke, like that is the perfect example of it because everyone, like the women in the Mandalorian are all badass, and they aren't forced to be badass. They're just badass.
Mm-hmm.
And they're great.
And it was just like that scene came so naturally. You never once questioned why it was all women, and then it suddenly clicked in my head. I'm like, holy crap, they're all women right now. Whoa!
Yeah.
And I felt so good about it. Like that's how good. Like when you don't realize immediately.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was just like one little thing. Like it's not that big of a deal, but it's enough to be like. That just tells you how much they were pandering in that last movie. They're just like, look at all the things we can give you,
Well, you say it's
like
not
dabs.
Yeah, well, you say it's not a big deal when I think it actually is a pretty big deal. Because at that point, one of the biggest, a big complaint is how, I don't want to say unrepresented, but how there was so much more of an obvious emphasis on the men compared to the women. Female characters had some pretty strong roles, like Hela, Valkyrie. To a degree, Captain Marvel had a huge hype thing to it, but wasn't executed properly. But that was all after women weren't great in phases 1 and 2. Like at that point, it was only really.
Look at our tier list. Look at the tier list.
Yeah.
How many movies do you see that feature the woman? One,
Yeah.
and she was late in the game. Like, so I can
and
see
her
it.
movie was bad.
Yeah, and they didn't
Yeah.
even do it right because again they did the forcedness and so it failed.
It's so fucking corporate. Like
Yeah.
you can feel a studio exec like breathing down your neck, going, "Are you feel empowered? Are you empowered yet? Buy our merchandise."
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Like I'm hoping that when it comes to okay, hold on, before we get into the looking into the future aspect, like where are we putting Endgame? Because I'm putting it in good. I don't want to say it's
Yeah.
meh because there were some iconic moments.
I don't remember where I have it anymore. I think I have it in meh, but you can put it wherever you want. It's a
Yeah.
free country.
Just put it
It's free market.
All right.
GameStop is causing an economic crash. You can do whatever we want, man.
Who had that
Nice.
on their fucking 2021 bingo card?
I fucking sure as shit didn't.
All
So
right.
fucking funny.
Here is
One last thing with that.
Go ahead.
Harvey at the funeral.
That was very Lord of the Rings-esque and drawn out, I think a little bit too much.
Oh no, I'm not saying like the funeral itself. I'm saying Harvey showing up at the funeral.
Oh. Yeah, that should have been like
Is his name Harvey or Harley? Am I saying it wrong? Is it Harley?
Harvey.
Wait, who are we
It
talking
is
about?
Harvey?
I need to rename. Oh,
The
my
kid
God.
who helped him in
Yeah.
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 He showed
I
up
remember-
at the funeral and everyone was like, "Oh my god!" And he was like, "Oh, that's nice."
Yeah.
I don't think I recognized the actor because he's like gone through fucking puberty, but
Yeah, crazy how that happens, eh?
yeah, God.
Yeah. All right, so I will now end my or I'll end the stream, and let's just have like, I guess, a closing discussion, because we are going to have film franchises, I guess, is another episode. But yeah, so after ranking all 23 Marvel movies, holy shit, first of all, fuck. I didn't think it was going to be that long. But I guess, yeah, let's talk about the future of it.
What future? Joker killed the franchise. There's nothing left.
All
No.
right. I mean, like, so it's obvious that Marvel is going to be moving into phase 4, despite the fact that I think so many people are now burnt out, I think. And the only people who are really going to stick around are maybe like the hardcore fans, because it is so, it would be difficult to try to keep everyone's attention after a climactic ending as Endgame. Like, for better or for worse, like, that was supposed to be the ending of it, right?
Mhm.
And what can we expect now in phase 4 that they will try to, you know, are they going to introduce the Eternals? Are they going to finally put the X-Men in? Like, what's going to happen? Right. And I guess let's just talk about that. Like, what can we expect for phase 4 in the future of the MCU?
I was watching a video essay by Jack Saint recently where he was it was not related to the MCU at all, but like he touched on sort of like the idea of trending uh film genres, and he was talking about how like it was sort of like a tangented point. He was talking about how he was talking about post-apocalyptic movies, and he was talking about how like a lot of like movies like Mad Max are inspired by like cowboy western stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then he tangented off into this point where he talked about how like in their heyday, the spaghetti western were basically like the superhero movies of today. Like spaghetti westerns like dominated Hollywood. Like if you made a spaghetti western, that was money in the fucking bank. And like it may not sound like much from back in those days money, but like inflation, whew, yeah, those movies made bank. But like eventually, as time went on, people they sort of lost touch with them. They figured like, okay, these spaghetti westerns, they're really violent, but they're very generic, and like it's basically just a good cowboy and a bad cowboy. There's nothing very interesting about this. So spaghetti westerns had to, in order to like maintain their popularity, they had to evolve. And then instead of your classic John Waynes, you'd have like some guys like your Clint Eastwoods who are like they were less good guy cowboys and they were more like westerner cowboys, and how we sort of understand them now. They were sort of bad boys, but like on the good side, but only by virtue of the fact that they were being paid by the good guys. And they always did shit like they took the money in advance to do the good guy thing for the story. They were always a bit rough around the edges, and they broke the rules a bit, and the genre had to like evolve and change. And I feel like we are at a tipping point with superhero movies where like people are getting, as you said, they're getting burnt out, and we're having like a little bit of superhero fatigue. And I think, uh, as silly as a comparison is to say, like Joker is like that's the dark expansion of the series. I do think that like we are gonna have to see more superhero movies like be willing to take risks, and not even just like in terms of properties, but like what the kind of movies they make are. Like I I think the way that the Marvel Cinematic Universe has worked up to now has like it's worked for them so far to make these movies like they're very homogenous. They're like each other. Like you can look at most of the Marvel movies and be like, "This is a Marvel movie. I know what this is because I can. It has. They all have like sort of similar scores. They all kind of look similar-ish, and like they have a very same vibe. I think it's gonna be like incumbent upon them to like really take risks and like work with more stylistic directors and like make weird shit, because I think that's what's gonna keep people interested.
Yeah. I mean, like, ultimately, as per any film franchise, there comes a phase. Like, it happened with the I guess as we had talked about last season, the Hunger Games era, where it was like there was a point in time where it was where most of the cinema was dominated by, dystopic YA stories, right? And most people aren't really doing that anymore. But I think why as per the tier ranking video, or as per the tier list, that I was saying that like they should have waited to release Far From Home is because it would give enough people to live off of, or it would give people like a good ending, for better or for worse, if they had just stopped with Endgame and not release Far From Home a few months after all of that had happened. Because by that point, some people were already burnt out. They were like, why should I go see, Far From Home if, like Tony had just died, right? Like people should have had more time, I guess, missing the character. And granted, in Far From Home, they didn't really they didn't really milk Tony's death that much, which I think was appreciated. But at the same time, like, it would have been like if you could have set that story far, like maybe a year into the future, I think, and not several months in, and you could have still had the elementals and fucking what's his name, fishbowl head guy as the antagonist. Like,
Mysterio?
huh? Mysterio, that's what it was.
Fishbowl head guy.
I'm sorry. It's late. But like you could have had all of that and just change a few things like time-wise, and I don't think that would have I don't think that wouldn't have like changed anything. Like
I don't think anything was more damning to Endgame's existence than like going or when Infinity War came out, I was like, oh, everyone died. Wow. Spider-Man 2 comes out in a year, so like that's obviously not permanent.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I think also too, like after how many years of pumping out superhero movies, maybe twice, like once or twice a year, like people really did need the break anyway. Like,
Yeah, although it gets me worried, like now that we've had what has been, it's been like almost 2 years without a Marvel movie. Like
Black Widow should have been out already.
Black Widow should have been out. Black Widow and Eternals both should have been out already. And like I know WandaVision is starting, but that's a TV show. But like I feel like they're gonna have to put out something really, really special if they want to like keep the steam going. And I have my doubts about their upcoming projects if those will do the trick.
mm. like the whole burnout thing too. Like I was so burnt out. I thought I was so burnt out after all of it that I still haven't watched WandaVision yet because I don't
same.
I don't think I'm like ready in a way to jump back into the MCU right now. Like I hear that it's taking a strange turn and I think that's interesting, but after everything that had happened, I'm still expecting for the whole like, okay, well, she's just gone in, like Wanda has just gone insane and she's just making all this shit up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that's likely how it's going to end anyway, but
Yeah. The only reason I'm watching it right now, because I didn't even really want to watch it, I watched it because I didn't want to get spoiled. And it's a good thing I did because, yes, there's been a lot of spoilers going around already. So it's like, I have to.
I'm planning on just waiting until it's finished to watch it, if I do watch it.
I think so too. The thing is, if you were to compare it to The Mandalorian is a very original story that you can get or that you can invest in from the get-go. But reinvesting in characters you've already familiarized yourself with, especially characters that you have seen their story end, basically, it'll take some time to like jump back into that, I guess. Or at least maybe that's just how I'm thinking of it.
No, that makes sense. It's also interesting that you compare it to The Mandalorian because Mandalorian has been like super loved because it's something that people who don't even like really love Star Wars, who don't really know that much about Star Wars, who maybe even
never seen anything about it, still watch The Mandalorian, understand it, and enjoy it. Even if there's a couple things that maybe like they don't like get the significance of, they can still watch and enjoy it. You can't watch WandaVision without knowing what's happened or what may happen.
Yeah.
Like it's different, it's strange for sure, but you still need to know what's been happening in the universe to understand what's going on. And that's the thing. With anything going forward with Marvel, you'll have to just know stuff. You can't really just jump in anywhere.
Yeah.
And I mean that's just like part of my issue with the MCU. I talked about this with you guys like off the podcast, but like this part of my issue with like how they're structured. You can't really like, if I want to just watch the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, which like ideally I should be able to do. It's sort of what I do with DC. I basically just watch Shazam and like the ones that I'm interested in and the ones that I think I'll actually like. But with Marvel, if I just wanted to watch the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, which I know I like, I would have to watch Avengers Endgame to understand what the fuck is going on in Guardians of the Galaxy 3 whenever that comes out. And then in order to understand what's going on in Avengers Endgame, I'd have to it's a never-ending spiral from there.
Yeah. I guess in that case then, I think, yeah, we've kind of said all we've needed to for this. Like, it's been a very long discussion, and I know that when I have to edit this, at some point, editor me is gonna fucking hate all of us for talking this long, but...
What did you expect? 23 movies? Even if we did 1 minute a piece for each movie?
Yeah.
It still would have been fucking long.
Yeah. I mean, like, there was a lot to talk about, and I was excited that, like, we finally had time to do it, but, like, oh my god. Like, I can maybe chop it down, but Jesus. Alright,
Like that.
Sorry I ranted so much.
No, it's fine. Like, your rants are always welcome, Gabe.
Always enjoyable.
Yes. I bet if this audience, like, I bet if, like, the channel blew up, like, they would love your rants.
Oh, for sure. I can just see it. All the Gabe lovers just like, hell yeah, give me more.
You just see us.
Want a channel just for him.
Like, you get, like, a bunch of live tweets being like, oh my god, Gabe's rants are amazing.
Scrum.
You'd have a bunch of Sims going after your rants. I'd love to see that.
If I develop Sims, delete the channel.
They're gonna be like, hey, we're simping for like Lemon Heart so bad, and then you just like shoot your like you like film yourself burning a no, that's not what I meant.
But it's not what you meant, but it's what God intended.
Jesus.
All right, I think let's call it for tonight then. So.
Oh, we're still recording.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Include this.
Yes, of course. All right, everybody who's been listening, first of all, how the fuck did you do it? Even with timestamps included? God damn, you must be very, very bored right now. Anyway,
if you're skipping to the end, Marvel sucks and I hate it. Good night.
If you've been here from the beginning and you're still here at the end, I love you.
You do know that's on record, right, Brooke? This is going onto a public channel.
Then delete it.
Oh my god.
Then cut that part out.
I'll clip it for Instagram. How about that?
Fuck you.
Brooke, you're not me. I'm the one who gets clipped for Instagram. I am the clown.
Yeah, goddammit. I can't just throw it. You're not allowed to do that.
You think you can come in here and take my throne after I've worked so goddamn hard to sit here and make jokes all day? Not gonna happen.
My apologies.
All right, I've officially lost control. Good night, everybody.